I'd like to call City Council back to order. Roll call, please.
Miranda,
Here.
Maniscalco, Hurtak,
Here.
Clendenin,
Here.
Young,
Here.
Vieira, Carlson. You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Say something? And Councilman Maniscalco has entered the room. We left off with item number 55, first reading consideration.
Good afternoon, Council. Andrea Zellman, City Attorney. Welcome again to Councilwoman Young. I asked Kamaria to give me a few minutes to just sort of set the table. Some of you I've briefed on some of these issues before, but I would ask you to indulge me and let me just give you a little background before Kamaria walks you through the ordinance, partly for the benefit of our newest council member and also to respond to some issues that have been raised as recently as, this morning. I just want to make sure everyone understands, and I'm speaking specifically to the question of why did we hire outside counsel to become the special magistrate, and what does all that mean? So just for background, prior to April of last year, of this past April, we were using volunteer special magistrates for code enforcement. And for quite some time, we were having difficulty. We needed more. I think we were down to 2. They obviously had scheduling conflicts. They weren't being paid. You can't blame them for sometimes not showing up. Kamaria, and she had assistance with others in my office who were reaching out to people they knew. We couldn't find anyone willing to beef up our volunteer corps. That was one issue. Because of the fact that a lot of our hearings were getting canceled because we were down to 2 and sometimes one wouldn't show up, we had an 18-month backlog in code enforcement cases, 18 months. And as I say to you all, whenever I have the opportunity, there's no point in having a code if we can't enforce it. So when we can't even get a case to hearing for 18 months after it's ripe for hearing, that really makes some of our provisions, what's the point then? And then the final point is we have, and I don't want to embarrass anyone, I don't want to name names, and I don't want to talk about cases, but we've had a number of cases. One as recently as yesterday, we got a court order on a motion for summary judgment in an ongoing case where the judge specifically said that the order issued by one of our special magistrates was deficient. And I don't want to go into the specifics because, again, this is ongoing litigation, but I've heard comments to the effect that now that we have an attorney doing this work, it's like a real court. It's not the friendly neighborhood atmosphere it used to be. Well, it is a court. Property rights are being impacted. And anyone, whether it's the neighbor complaining about what's going on at their neighbor's house or the person whose property has been cited, should want that. You should want a professional who understands property rights making the decisions on code enforcement matters. And one final point to that part is, at the time we were discussing going ahead and hiring an outside counsel, there was a bill pending in last year's legislative session that would have required all special code enforcement special magistrates to be attorneys. And it ended up not moving forward, but when we read it, we thought, actually, that was kind of what piqued the idea that maybe we should go ahead and just hire outside counsel to be the code enforcement magistrate, because it makes sense. Again, these are private property rights that are being impacted. So as you'll recall, back in 2022, we brought to you a form agreement for outside counsel services. We brought to you a list of names of law firms that had responded to an RFQ. Last June, we increased the annual amount that those law firms could charge in a given year, partly to cover this issue. And one of the firms that had responded to our RFQ was the firm of Trastano, which is a very well-known, they've been around since 1973, firm in Pinellas County that represents at least 16 cities as city attorney. And then there's 4 cities in which they serve as either a code enforcement special magistrate or the legal advisor to a code enforcement board. And just to be clear, no one from our office can serve as the magistrate. There's case law to this effect as well. Because our office is prosecuting the code enforcement case, someone else has to serve as the magistrate. And to the suggestion that a paid outside counsel serving as a magistrate has some sort of bias or conflict of interest, with all due respect, that's insulting and nonsensical for a number of reasons. Across the state of Florida, there are cities and counties who are doing what we're doing. They've hired an attorney to serve as their special magistrate. They have to be paid by the city. That's how we hire them. But to suggest that they're biased is unfair. It's inappropriate. They're all members of the bar. They understand what their duties are as a special magistrate. Code enforcement is governed by statute, it's governed by our code, it's governed by case law. They know what it is they're supposed to find, not find, weigh, not weigh. So, you know, to suggest there's bias because we're paying them or because I hired them, and just for the record, I never met the person that we hired to be the special magistrate until recently when I attended a hearing just to see how he was conducting the hearings. So this isn't, you know, to suggest that I'm somehow influencing this person or whatever is just, it's very inappropriate and untrue. So I just wanted to kind of set the table about that to just make sure that you understand why we did what we did. You know, again, we were kind of in an emergency we were in an emergency situation with this 18-month backlog, and we had to do something. Oh, and one other point, when we had volunteer magistrates, we also were paying an outside counsel to be the legal advisor to the magistrates. We no longer have to do that because we have an attorney as the magistrate. He doesn't need someone else's legal advice on how to conduct the hearing. Again, Tom Trask, the person that is doing it, does this in other jurisdictions. Very familiar with the code enforcement statute, the code enforcement, our code now, any relevant case law. I'm very comfortable with him. I think if you were to watch him, you would see, again, he's conducting the hearings with the correct due process that should be provided to a property owner in these cases. So I just wanted to make those points and then let Kamaria walk you through the ordinance unless you have a question.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
Yes, I do have a question. So I'm just curious why, if there was already legal representation, why those lawyers didn't look over any judgments before they were filed to prevent the types of legal issues, court issues you're talking about?
That's a good question. I don't know that we ever asked him to. We had one attorney doing it. I don't know that we ever asked him to.
Yeah, that seems like it would have been
It would have been a
quick
good
fix.
idea in retrospect. But, you know, again, that, and yeah, I can't answer that. I don't know why it didn't occur to us to do that sooner.
And I really do, I appreciate you coming up and saying all this. I spent all day yesterday at code enforcement hearings. And, you know, the morning ones were sad. I mean, it was very sad, and I do see the point. I mean, a lot of the cases were in Sulphur Springs. There were people who couldn't afford to fix these things. And the fines were substantial. And I mean, I was uncomfortable, I will say. But the part that really upset me was the afternoon session where there was an hour and 20 some odd minute hearing before the magistrate realized that he had the wrong case, or it was the wrong person that staff had cited. And that was a waste of an hour and a half almost.
Yes, Kamari
And
told
and
me-
I don't want to talk about specific
Yeah,
cases because
yeah.
I understand
Yeah.
that we can't get into that, but that was a real disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting to see a magistrate who was going to, who knew the work, and that's not what that showed me.
That, my understanding was on staff, not him, but let me.
But he didn't catch it for an hour and a half, is my point.
Yeah.
And when he finally caught it, then he was able to. So I appreciate being able, you coming up and saying this, but I'll be honest, yesterday left me with a lot more questions and a lot more concern.
If I can address one thing you said, you talked about the fines, and Kamaria will talk about this as well. Our goal is not to collect fines. Our goal is to get properties into compliance, which is why we also have a settlement policy where we typically, if someone brings a property into compliance, we will settle with them for typically in the hundreds of dollars, maximum $5,000, and those are in the most egregious cases. We're not there to collect money, but sometimes you have to put the fines on to get the attention. You know, we have a lot of cases where out-of-town property owners buy houses, let them fall into disrepair. They don't care because they know that, 5 years from now when they flip it, then, someone can work out a deal with the city. But until then, we've got the fines running, we've got the lien, and that gets their attention. Our goal is always to try to get the property into compliance. And that's why, as you know, in CRA, you have some programs to help people that don't have the money, maybe help them get grants to do cleanup work or whatever, which is a whole other subject. But again, yes, the fines sound bad, but the goal isn't to collect them. The goal is to incentivize someone to get out there and clean the property up.
But, again, I mean, I've had conversations with Ms. Pettos-Mackel about this. I've had conversation with staff about this. And this is the part that I just don't understand. I don't understand why we're fining people or giving them these fines. And these, again, are people who are already struggling. When you see pictures of their houses, you know why their house is the way it is. They cannot afford to fix it. And instead, we're fining them by the day. And they don't know that at the end, they're going to be able to basically do it,
But I would
figure
go
it
back
out for
to the
pennies on
flips.
the dollar. But I understand what you're saying, but I do think that there needs to be a bit of a balance. If there's a different, fee structure for homeowner occupied versus, a rental property. For me, again, I just had a lot more questions than answers. And what I want to see at the end of this, honestly, I really would prefer a workshop on this and really debate code enforcement, because we have a lot of things we need to fix.
Okay.
And yesterday just absolutely solidified that for me.
Okay. Two things, again, we have a code and we want to enforce it. So we have to be careful about saying, well, but in this case, I don't know that we should enforce, that's the flip side, is what's the point of enacting all these code regulations as to the proper care of property and, keeping it from getting overgrown and keeping it from getting unsightly if we don't enforce it. And we have to be careful about being selective. And, I would also note that, yes, there's things we can workshop, but the overall structure of code enforcement is governed by state statute. And again, I'll let Kamari get into this because she knows it much better than do I. But, that's going to have some constraints on our leeway as well.
Don't move, because I got three.
Okay.
Councilman Vieira, Carlson, then Maniscalco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just really quick on some things. I have no objection to the proposal for attorneys. I think that's something that obviously can be a benefit. Without getting into specific cases, in a lot of land use cases, I look at certain things, I look at some cases a certain way because I'm an attorney and I look at exposure. I've never done land use in my life, but I understand, like I always say, I'm not going to write a political check that could bounce later in circuit court, right? It is what it is. My challenge is a couple of things. If we do go forward with this, I would like to see maybe a year from now what budget impact this has in terms of how much money we're spending on this. I think that's important to note. I do think that just because they're attorneys doesn't make them necessarily better or worse on some things. There is the knowledge and the wherewithal in terms of the seat that they occupy that's very important. But what I would be looking for, I'll be honest, is in something Councilwoman Hurtak kind of got to, which is empathy and compassion. I know we all agree on this on situations like this. You know, an attorney can know their the exposure that exists to the city, doing things right and so forth, but there is something to be said, and I know we all agree about this, about mercy and compassion on things like this. You know, you have the debate on judges, and we see that a lot in the federal level in terms of, you know, following the letter of the law versus, you know, compassion, living constitution, whatever. But I do think that's certainly something that's important. Perhaps we could look at bar associations that I think are more socially conscious, the George Edgecombe Bar Association, for example, and look at some of those organizations where you're potentially going to get people that are going to look at the bigger picture, right? So the thing on attorneys, very well taken. I would be supportive of that, but number one, budget within a year, and number two, make sure that we go, you know, fishing in a pond where we're going to get some good, compassionate people who understand common sense and empathy. Because again, these type of things can destroy somebody, and we need to have folks with heart. But thank you.
Councilman Carlson?
You know, because we've talked about this before, there's a perception by a lot of people in the public that there's bias within the city overall, and not by everybody, but in certain areas. And the general feeling is that if a property owner hires one of 2 or 3 lobbyists, that they get whatever they want and everybody else gets screwed. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's the perception in the public. You know that in my opinion, or as I've observed, that carries over to legal advice. And you know, something we are going to need to fix in the charter next week is further defining who the client of the city attorney is. Although the charter says clearly who the city attorney is, in practice, especially in the past, I know you've been trying, Ms. Zellman's been trying to change this, but in the past it was very biased toward the mayor, whoever the mayor was. And we need to make sure that the folks are representing the city, and that they're, in the case of the city attorney, are representing all of their clients, not just one. And if there's a conflict, we need a way of handling that. But we clearly saw in some of the opinions, like the opinion that was written on how to handle settlement agreements. Clearly that was biased, probably to cover up something that we haven't discovered yet. We don't know. Also, you know that I have great concerns about some of the opinions that have come forward from outside attorneys, and I won't mention cases, but there's at least one where I think the outside attorney, because they were biased toward the administration, wrote things that opened the city to slander lawsuits. And so far we're lucky that we haven't gotten those lawsuits, but I have concerns about making sure that we have attorneys that are not biased in any way. And what I don't want is for to hear things like I heard this morning. I don't want to hear people coming forward saying, well, we believe that it was biased because somebody hired certain lobbyists, or sometimes people who aren't registered lobbyists who should be registered as lobbyists. I just want to make sure, I would rather table this to a larger workshop also, because I think there's a bigger discussion. And let me say for the record, I don't know what's going on with the head of code enforcement, but for the time that I've known him, a year and a half or whatever, he's been very responsive to the investigating the code violations. I don't know what happens after that. I know most of the constituents I work with have been happy, but I want to make sure that there's not a perception in the public that certain, and I don't even know what attorneys you're talking to or have hired, but I want to make sure there's not a perception in the public that certain attorneys have been hired, or certain situations have been set up, or that certain people in the administration have influence that could bias the process. I want to make sure that it's very clear what not only the state guidelines are, but what the expectations are. And in this case, to follow the law and not be biased by anybody else. Thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you very much. Before I got elected, I served on the Code Enforcement and Public Nuisance and Abatement Board, and that gave me an interesting perspective. You know, we didn't have a lot of cases. I was an alternate, and I was able to take part in a lot of the hearings because there was always somebody absent. But what I see in going from the magistrates to this new system is you had one magistrate that was appointed by Mayor Sandy Freeman, who hasn't been in office, in 30 years. And he was so proud. We gave him commendations here. And they were so proud for their service to the city. And what I saw in those individuals is they're connected to their neighborhoods, they're connected to the community. Not saying that these attorneys are not, but it was like neighbors with neighbors, citizens with citizens. And the gentleman that spoke, Mr. Revis, who's in the audience, he was saying, you no longer have citizens coming before other citizens. Not saying that those attorneys, don't know the community, but, in government and in politics, there is a clear lack of compassion. And when I served on that board, not as a magistrate, but as a code enforcement board member, I tried to serve with compassion. I mean, some cases were egregious. We had drug activity on properties. We had all sorts of stuff. But when you have somebody that clearly, can't afford, or they feel intimidated coming here, you want to try to be understanding. Not that they're not not understanding, but it's a different feel. And yes, I mean, you mentioned it as you spoke earlier about it feels like people are coming into a courtroom, and they're standing before a judge. It's the temperature is different, the environment is different. Yeah, it's the same chambers, but just I don't know. I mean, I too have sat in cases over the years, and I'm grateful to those magistrates that gave so much of their time in service to the community. You had mentioned that even within your network and in your circles and legal circles, it was difficult to find people to step up to the plate. Not everybody wants to do volunteer work for free. My father's the first critic. Before I got elected, he goes, "You go to this meeting. Do you get paid for any of this?" And I go, "I just love Tampa. I love the community." And that's true till today. But going back to the original system, I think works with those volunteer magistrates. Perhaps we did not advertise it enough. I mean, we're talking about the Charter Review Commission coming up. And I've been contacted by many people that want to serve on the board. Why? Because it's such a big thing. Perhaps we need to advertise it further, because there are people that are interested, not because they want to run for office, but they want to get involved in some capacity. We see folks that get involved in their neighborhood associations. They get involved in THAN. That's all volunteer work. But at the end of the day, they care. These magistrates that retired, if you want to call it that, they really cared. I saw their passion. I know some of them personally, and I go, you don't have to do this. Nobody's making you do this. They do this because they want to do it. And I think when it was in that system and you had that environment, I think people felt more comfortable. I feel that, being present in front of an attorney, it could intimidate some folks where they feel like, you have an elderly individual that's on Social Security that gets a code enforcement issue and they go, do I have to hire an attorney? I don't know. I'm not a good public speaker. I've never had this happen to me before. That's an extra expense. It's another hurdle between the public and their government. I mean, there's just so many things that I'm concerned about. Councilmember Carlson mentioned tabling this and having a workshop. I would just like to vote this down. I know that Ms. Pettis-Mackel has worked very hard on this, and I'll close by saying that there was a proposition at the state level that did not pass. So we're not obligated by the state to do this. This is not a time is of the essence issue. I think we could look at other options. And again, we are the closest level of government to the people. That's why I ran for city council, municipal. These code enforcement officers or magistrates are closest to the people. And when nobody wants to see a code enforcement officer come up to their property and cite them, and because you panic. Well, what if daily fines? What if I don't? What I can't afford it? What if I can't get the money? It's a very intimidating situation to be in. And I understand we need law and order, and we need to maintain. People need to maintain their properties and businesses and whatnot. But perhaps we should go back to the original way with the volunteer magistrates and advertise it better, because there's a lot of good, smart people that are not attorneys that would be more than happy to do this. Thanks.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, sir. First of all, when all this happened some time back, that there was changeover from volunteers to privatized, whatever you want to call it, I met with the 4 individuals that were here. And they told me one of the faults that they had is that they never had 1 or 2 or 3 alternates appointed at the same time that they were given the opportunity. That's what they told me. And second, they said, as soon as you go private, the cost of those individuals coming before the board is going to increase the penalties for them. And they were right, from what I've heard, on that era. And I'm not saying, or your case or anybody in the legal department, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the act itself. So what I think happened here is that those individuals' premise was exactly what you said. The program is set up not to collect money, but to fix the problem, so that this neighborhood don't cave in, and then we have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on fixing a whole neighborhood. And that's what it's all about. And that's how they did it. They collect maybe $50 or $100, pay when you can, and make sure it got paid. But now they tell me it's 4 and 5 times that amount of money that they're paying in. And like the 2 council members prior to me speaking, it's something about it that we're going to go to. It's exactly what you said, and you were right. Code enforcement is meant to make sure that the property values stay where they're at and they don't decay and create more density of miserable houses going on and all kind of activities going on. It makes the break even without breaking the bank of the people that are creating the same problem. I mean, it's a very difficult question. It's a different program. So we're caught here, and I don't even want to say, and I agree with a workshop of some kind, because when you look at Harbor Island, Palmacia, Davis Island, Carbos Isles, how many cases do they have there a year? I don't think they have too many. But when you look at the neighborhoods of East Tampa, West Tampa, Sulphur Springs, all those and the fringes around those areas is where all the action is, because why? There's where they're at. They can't keep up with the payments of the house and fix the house. So something has to happen, in my opinion, and you're absolutely right, and I'll say it again, it was meant only to make the house bring up to the standard, not to fine somebody, but the fine is what gave them the incentive to go out and do that.
Well, and if I may remind you all, several of you have asked us to do something to regulate pickleball courts. And as soon as we can figure out a way to get around Senate Bill 180, or if that goes away and we can do that, remember, the only enforcement tool we're going to have is code enforcement.
Well,
And you can't say, well, no, we want you to be hard on the people in South Tampa that are building pickleball courts, but
No.
be nicer to the people in Sulphur Springs. We can't do that. That raises all kinds of equal protection of the law issues. So remember, anytime you want to have code regulate something, our tool to do that is code enforcement.
well, let me say this. You can solve the pickleball court problem without the pickleball court problem. Just don't let the people in the back build a concrete, anything larger than something. And that solves that problem, because then you can't build a pickleball
But
court without concrete.
To do something about
I
that, we have to
understand that.
cite them for
I understand. Then
violating
you're
the
gonna get sued
code,
on-
for
I
building
understand all
something
that.
they shouldn't have, and then we enforce it
I
through the
understand
code
that.
enforcement process. Anyway, I'm sorry. Let me let Kamaria talk.
Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
let's let the presentation continue.
Good afternoon. Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the Legal Department. I'm here on file number E 2025-E, Chapter 9, Code Enforcement. I do have some slides explaining what the proposed changes are for, again, this is specifically only about Chapter 9 Code Enforcement. And then after I get done with my presentation, City Council received an email asking some specific questions, and I have answers to those questions. So if I am able to, I'd like to answer those questions, and also some of the public comment that's been provided.
I would anticipate that, thank you.
So the first part of the ordinance that is before you is to change Code Section 9-2, which is regarding definitions. There's been public comment that the legal department is proposing to eliminate the volunteer special magistrates. As I said during my first presentation, this legal department's not proposing to eliminate it. We're asking to add the provision to allow the legal department to hire outside counsel. So it's adding outside counsel. Also, changing the definition of a repeat violator that's defined in Code Section 9-2. This proposed change aligns with the language that's in Florida statute, Right now, the current language does not mirror the Florida statute. So the proposed language for the change is underlined, and that mirrors Florida statutes, which is to our benefit to the city, to allow the code inspectors to provide those factors to the special magistrate that a particular property owner has violated the code numerous times. So this code, these proposed changes, especially regarding the definition of repeat violator, would align this code definition with Florida statute. The other proposed code change is regarding code section 9-2, special settlement for liens. Right now, the current code discusses lien settlement that is not used and is not applicable throughout the entire code enforcement process. It's about community gardens requirements. That has nothing to do with zoning requirements. That has nothing to do when a person violates Chapter 5 of our building code. That's not the correct criteria. The current criteria that the legal department uses to settle code enforcement liens is by a policy decision, which is an executive order. The entire city council received an email on August 28th when I first did this presentation about what the executive order is. You have a copy of the executive order, and it outlines the way in which the legal department provides settlement offers across the board to either homestead properties or non-homestead properties. Those property owners in those specific categories are given the same settlement offer depending on when they came in compliance with the code. So it's the same for everyone, whether you're homestead or non-homestead property, okay? And what I wanted to add to this is that this process right here only comes into play when the special magistrate loses jurisdiction. Our code states that the special magistrate has jurisdiction 90 days after a deadline for compliance unless the special magistrate retains jurisdiction not to exceed 180 days, okay? So that is the process. If the special magistrate still has jurisdiction, property owners, once they come into compliance with the code, can request a hearing to present to the special magistrate. As long as the special magistrate has jurisdiction, these are the factors that it took, to take into consider why it took me so long to come into compliance. Special magistrate, would you please, because of my circumstances, please reduce the fine. And the special magistrate listens to those requests. But the legal department only reduces settlement offers when the special magistrate loses jurisdiction. And I just want to quickly address a comment that the public doesn't know about this policies and procedures or how to reduce a fine. That's actually incorrect. I receive emails, countless emails, on a daily basis. I want to reduce my fine. I've got emails that I got to respond to as soon as I get done with this. As long as the special magistrate has jurisdiction, the special magistrate will hear those requests for fine reduction. If the special magistrate does not have jurisdiction because their timeline has expired, of course, I'm going to tell this person, this is the offer, the settlement offer, based upon the executive order of what your settlement is in order to release the lien. So people do know, because they have to contact the clerk's office or the legal department in order to get the lien off of their property. So the public is fully aware of the process of releasing a lien. And if they don't know, they always know to contact the legal department or code enforcement, and it eventually gets to me or the clerk's office. The proposed changes regarding code section 9-104 and 9-105, we're only suggesting that those provisions should apply to the volunteer special magistrates and not to if the legal department hires outside counsel, okay? Right. The next proposed change in the ordinance is for 9-110 administrative fines. This specific provision is regarding demolition of a building or structure. This proposed language follows the recent legislation in 2025, Senate Bill 582, that allows the special magistrate to increase the fine or the penalty in regards to properties that are on the National Register of Historic Places or a contributing resource. So this amendment, this proposed amendment would allow the special magistrate to increase the penalty. Right now, this is not in our code. So we don't have this language in our code that has already passed in the 2025 legislative session. The last proposed the last proposed changes in the ordinance are regarding the timelines in order to challenge an inspection report and a rehearing. Those are the code sections that those provisions are outlined. The recommendations that I have in the ordinance cleans up the language because the deadline should be from the date the order of the special magistrate. Right now, the language is it does not make sense. So it says that the deadline to impose or deadline to challenge or ask for a rehearing is when the item of the order is uploaded. It should be from the date of the order that's on the order. It cleans up that language and it provides more clarity of the code sections. So that concludes my summation of the ordinance, but I just want to go quickly through the public comment that was emailed.
Can we pause 1 second? Councilman Carlson, you had a question about that presentation?
Yeah, I just want to ask a quick question, and I think you guys have answered this in a previous meeting, but I know, especially in the last administration, there were concerns about alleged abuse of the fine forgiveness or settlement process. I think you kind of hit on this, that this mayor, this administration has an executive order. I don't know if it's the same one that you just mentioned, but sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but I think this administration's executive order limits the amount of settlement. You said you created certain categories, but in the last administration, there was one that was a 6-figure amount that was apparently waived 100%. So it's not possible for anybody to waive a fine 100% now.
That's incorrect. And I can go into that if you like me right now.
Councilwoman Hurtak has that executive order here if you want to look at it.
And I have a copy of it here if you.
You said it is possible to waive 100% now, or?
If you would like me to answer your question, I can. It's a specific provision in the executive order.
Absolutely.
Because there were before I got on council, I heard a lot of complaints about that, so I just wanted to make sure that that process is especially not arbitrary too.
So it's called the Distress Structure Rehabilitation Program, and this is in the executive order. If a property, and this goes to address one of the questions from the email that was sent to City Council. If a property is not in compliance with the code, they can contact the legal department or code enforcement staff to say, I want to take advantage of this program. In this program, if you are not in compliance of the code, again, the goal is compliance. If you pull the required permits, do the work in order to bring your property into compliance, and city staff determines you're in compliance with the code, under this program, the department can waive the soft cost liens associated with the code enforcement matter because you're in compliance with the code. But it's under this program, Councilman Carlson. It's under this program. So there is a provision if you ask to say, I need help or I need time or I want to enter into this program, this allows a waiver of the code enforcement fines from the special magistrate if they come into compliance with the code.
Okay,
But this does not apply, Councilman Carlson, if we're talking about hard cost liens. This program is not about hard cost liens, but just that, and I'm glad you brought it up. That's one of the comments that I was going to address, is that the Distress Structure Rehabilitation Program, if a person asks to be a part of this is public information. They can pull the required permits, show that they're in compliance with the code, and the department can waive the soft cost lien.
So I'll probably call and ask some additional questions if you don't mind. But can I just, one additional question. This was done by executive order. Why was it not done by ordinance? Or why shouldn't it be done by ordinance?
As Ms. Zellman said before, the first time, or in the email that she sent the first day I presented this executive order allows the department and the legal department, administration and the, all parties who utilize the settlement of code enforcement liens a quicker way to make amendments if there are any changes that need
But
to.
my question,
Well,
sorry.
can I
to
finish, Mr. Chair, just finish what I was saying?
Sorry, I didn't mean.
So it allows for the changes to be made to the executive order in a quicker fashion as opposed to having to present to city council at 2 public hearings, ordinance changes for an administrative process. Because it's the legal department that settles the code enforcement liens, and that's why it's through executive order.
I just want, just to follow up, and sorry, I didn't realize you were going there, so that's why I started to cut you off. But I wonder if there's a concern in the public about ordinances versus executive orders, and I wonder if there's a part of this that we could codify in an ordinance and then put a very narrow band in an executive order so that so the public would have trust in it. We can have a longer conversation.
I have a question. I know Maniscalco, you're
Go.
next, but can I ask a quick
Yeah,
question? So you talked about, so the public on the distress structure rehabilitation program, they have to specifically request to be included in that. Yeah, I understand, let's say I'm the person that's not learned and not totally into city, policies. Are we compelled to disclose this program to people who are being fined?
Are we compelled to?
Yeah, in other words, so do they have to go digging through this to find it themselves?
No, this is public records, public information.
But that doesn't mean it's broadcast into their living rooms. I mean, I wouldn't know this was here.
The other beautiful piece is that code enforcement staff knows about this program. They're the department who's asked for this program to be in place and continue to be in place. So code enforcement staff is aware of it, and they're the first point of contact for the community and for the public. So if that's a conversation between code enforcement staff who are issuing the notices of violation to the property owner, in those instances, those conversations could take place.
So do you think that could be an equitable treatment thing if one code enforcement person is disclosing that to one homeowner or one code enforcement officer is not disclosing this program to another?
I can't speak on that, Mr. Chair.
I'm just wondering, maybe this is a proposed amendment to this executive order that on first contact that the city will brief these, avail them of that opportunity.
I understand that, and that's a great suggestion for an educational piece to the public regarding this program.
Yeah.
I see no issue with that.
Okay, Councilman Maniscalco.
So, quick question, going to the paid attorneys, what are they getting paid an hour, for example, to run one of these hearings?
So the rate is $225 per hour, and I believe that mirrors what what was paid for the other attorney who provided legal advice to the volunteer special magistrates.
And how long was the hearing that you were sitting in yesterday?
Camera magistrates that we modeled it after.
The whole
It
hearing was
also,
an hour and a half?
just the one case.
But how
it-
long was the whole hearing?
I wasn't able to stay because I had to get to the.
if
event.
I may
know
just,
where
if I just may finish my thought, Ms. Selman informed me that the $225 an hour is the same rate that the city pays for the special magistrates or the hearing officers for the red light camera.
Okay, and how long was yesterday's hearing, do you know? Was it a 6-hour total hearing? I mean, how much?
Which
what
one?
would you have? The afternoon session, for example.
The afternoon session, I think we got down at 4 o'clock.
Okay, beginning at what time? Noon? 1
It begins
o'clock.
at 1 o'clock. The
So
morning
it's-
session started at 9 a.m.
So 3 times 225. Okay.
Prep time too, though. Do they pay billable hours for what their prep time and all?
I'm sorry?
You pay billable hours for prep time and everything
I
else?
believe that that's included, but I mean, they're doing a thorough analysis of everything that, that's going to be before them so that they're educated about what they're going to hear. So and I have some additional responses about about the law firm if I.
I think we're still inquiring. Councilman Maniscalco, are you done?
So why not keep, we have these rules, we have everything that you've gone over, but just stick with the volunteer magistrates?
Why not?
Yeah.
I think Ms. Selman has already explained multiple reasons on the concern with having the volunteer special magistrates. I've got to tell you, because I've been with code enforcement for some time now, there was comments about, I think you had mentioned that, I'm trying to go for my notes, that people are intimidated. That's not at all I guess I'm giving you from the perspective from the city, but the special magistrate each time, and I hope you get an opportunity to see, the law for the attorney
sure, yeah,
at a code enforcement hearing that they are right now, is that they make sure that the property owner has the opportunity to speak to him, to tell them whatever they want to say. They are given that option. There is not a situation where the special magistrate says to a property owner, I don't want to hear from you, or you can't talk to me. That is the opposite. And I hope that what you've heard doesn't give you the impression that the special magistrate, the law firm, doesn't give people the ability to speak or say whatever they want to say. The concern, if that was the case, we could be violating that property owner's due process if they're not given the opportunity to speak. So again, I hope more people, even if you want to come to code enforcement hearings just to actually watch, you actually come to learn and understand the process that actually takes place. That the special magistrate gives people, the property owners, the ability to speak and to say whatever they need to say. But going back to my original point is that city staff appreciates that their responsibilities are even heightened. There's not all the time that the special magistrate agrees with what the city is doing or what they're proposing. The code enforcement staff, about the fines, they're only making a recommendation to the special magistrate. The ultimate person who makes the decision about what the daily fine should be is the special magistrate. It's not code enforcement staff. That's been the same process the entire time, even with the volunteer. So I don't want this city council to think that because there's a lawyer there in place that the city is, changing everything. They've always made a recommendation to the special magistrate. Again, the key word, and it was already said by someone, it's just a recommendation of what the daily fine will be. It's up to the special magistrate to follow Florida statute on how to determine what the daily fine should be. So it's not this just like flip a coin to figure out what the daily fine should be. He hears everything and takes into consideration what the city is asking.
Thank you.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you very much. Yeah, just briefly on a couple of things. When people are talking about being intimidated because there's a lawyer up there, not necessarily going to know that's a lawyer. I think the whole process is intimidating people. It doesn't matter if it's a lawyer, a farmer, a pharmacist, whatever up there. It's just going to be intimidating to people, and I respect that. With regards to the rate, I did want to opine on that, which is that would probably be a very reasonable rate, I think. I mean, I do insurance defense litigation. I always joke with people I'm an A- lawyer, but an A+ biller, so I know a thing or two about billable rates, right? But for insurance defense, for auto, for example, rates could be anywhere from $165 to $240, so that's within that, and that's considered low in the legal field. For high volume work and all that. So, and government practice rates are typically lower unless if you're talking about something very specialized. Insurance defense and medical malpractice, insurance coverage work is obviously much higher, but for what people like me do, it's lower. So there you go. So that's, I think that's good in that regard. Question for you. Since we are hiring attorneys in their capacity as attorneys, this just, you know what? I was going to ask about malpractice issues. That's going to waste time. Disregard. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know anything about malpractice.
We're going to be here past dinner.
Yeah.
If I could just keep going through the public to address the public.
Councilwoman Hurtak wanted to ask a question.
Okay.
Yeah. To Councilman Maniscalco's point when he was speaking, it made me think of something. Because you said it says that we can still use volunteer magistrates?
I'm not proposing to eliminate it. We
So
were never
why-
proposing.
Why wouldn't we go back to them, but instead use the paid lawyers as our backup if people can't show up. To me, that just seems like the perfect,
There you go. And
yeah.
not to interrupt, but again, when I was on the code enforcement board, I was an alternate, and there was always somebody missing, and I would jump at any opportunity to, and it was free, and I'm not an attorney, but I took part in like every hearing because there was always somebody missing. So that's they're perfect, because the volunteer magistrates that I've met, and I gave them the commendations when they were here, and some I've known even longer.
Can we wait till she defends, and then we can pontificate about how we're gonna dispose of this?
Yeah, they were so passionate about it, and they love doing it, is what I'm saying. Thanks.
Finish.
Thank you. I'm going to go section by section to address the email that was sent to City Council. The first section that was asked about is the difference between, regarding settlement negotiation, fines versus lien. All right. Hard cost liens, as it's stated in the executive order, and those are non-negotiable. The legal department will not negotiate or reduce hard cost liens. And I'll explain to City Council that hard cost liens are liens that result in the city taking action to bring a property into compliance. Then that is a lien on that property owner's property. We don't want to reduce or settle those liens because then the city would be at a loss. So those are the actual expenses. What has to be paid in order for the liens to be released are the negotiated liens associated with the code enforcement liens, and those are soft cost liens. As you were already emailed in the past, previously, in August, the soft cost liens are the breakdown in the executive order for the non-homestead and homestead properties, okay? So the legal department is only providing negotiated reduced costs for the liens, for soft cost liens, for code enforcement. So that's the answer to number one. Number two, he asked about policy sections, the distress structure versus compliance guidelines. The compliance guidelines in the executive order deal only with properties that are in compliance with the code. As I explained earlier, the distress structure program are for those property owners who are not in compliance with the code. So those are two different scenarios. Policy versus an ordinance. He asked the difference between 19-7 and 9-112. 19-7, again, Chapter 19, I'm here only about Chapter 9. Chapter 19, which is property maintenance, allows someone to challenge the billing of a hard cost lien. Again, that's challenging the billing of the hard cost lien. That code section it's in the code. Since I've been representing code enforcement, it's never been used. No one has ever challenged the billing of a hard cost lien. Versus the policy that clearly explains that hard cost liens cannot be settled or negotiated. Those liens are what the liens are because those are the expenses that the city spends and the city is just asking to be reimbursed. Two different things. So you could challenge the billing, but you cannot negotiate that hard cost lien. You could say a property owner, and I don't want to come up with a scenario, but hey, I didn't get a copy of that. All right, I didn't know that you guys were doing that. That's challenging the billing of the hard cost lien. That's not asking for a settlement or give me a lower amount for that hard cost lien. That's not what that process is for. Lastly, he's asked for ordinance revision to demolition of historic structures. And he specifically asked about, does this apply to buildings that the city demolishes? Well, again, that's in a different chapter other than Chapter 9, which is what I'm here about and what this ordinance is about. Chapter 19 allows a process for, again, as I just said previously, allows a process for an owner to challenge the building of a cost associated with abatement. This has nothing to do with Chapter 9 and the ordinance that I'm presenting in front of City Council. So I hope that addresses his questions, But there were some comments that happened earlier this morning that I want to go ahead and take care of. I've already addressed the first one, is that code enforcement staff have always given a recommendation to the special magistrates about what the daily fine should be. That's nothing new. There was a comment that when there was a violation of the building code and you have a code violation, that the daily fines would stop if you applied for I think it was a statement about a variance. Well, there's a process in the code for that. But just because you have a building, you're in the permitting process, your code enforcement fine does not stop. It's until you come into compliance with the code is when your daily fine will stop. So I don't want that misconception to be out there that if I'm pulling a permit, then my code fine stops. That is actually not the case at all, and it's never been the case. I think so far are the responses that I wanted to have for the public comment that I've already heard. But happy to answer any more questions. But again, this ordinance is only regarding Chapter 9. It updates language that to address language for the 2025 legislative session that are not in the code, that gives additional authority to the special magistrate for for fines for demolition. It allows for definitions to be revised to reflect the Florida statute for repeat violators, and it adds the provision to allow the legal department to hire outside counsel. So that's the gist of my ordinance.
Councilwoman Young, did you have any questions? Are you good? Okay, very good. Any other questions? So what is the,
So I like Councilmember Hurtak's suggestion about, what if we stayed with the volunteer magistrates? Yes, we gave them commendations, and yeah, we sent them into retirement, but if they wanted to come back, we had that option. And as the alternate, if we can't get somebody, we have those attorneys on retainer, on standby, let's say, to come in. Or is the response going to be, well, what if they're not available that day and we can't get an attorney? I don't,
Ms. Zellman?
And if I may, Andrea Zellman, as Kamaria said, we're not trying to destroy the volunteer program. We just want the other tool in our tool belt to be able to hire an attorney like we did in this situation where frankly we had gotten to a point of emergency, in my opinion. 18-month backlog, legally deficient orders. I hear what council's saying. We can try to bring volunteers into the rotation. What I would suggest is that we work with the attorney who's now been handling the cases, if he's willing to do this, and we'd pay him for this. Maybe start training some of those volunteer magistrates so we make sure we don't run into the problems that we were having with legally deficient orders. But that's not going to happen overnight, and we'd like to be able to continue the path we're on right now because we're not backlogged at all. Things are moving as they should be, and we want to be able to keep doing that. But I hear what you're saying. We can try to beef up the volunteer program, either as a backup, as an alternate, maybe particular types of cases with one, then with the other, we can look into that and work with that. But please don't take away our ability to do what we've done to, have the attorney there. But again, we're not taking away the ability, we're not asking you to take away the ability to use volunteers either.
okay.
We can try to improve both, but in the meantime, by passing this ordinance, you'd allow us to do exactly what I just described.
How about we continue this until you figure out what you want to do, speaking with the attorneys, and therefore, you have something? Because I would like that the volunteer magistrates are prioritized first, and then we have the paid attorneys as a backup.
I would ask you to not do that. This has already been continued since August. These things tend to just keep getting kicked down, and in the meantime, as Kamaria mentioned, there's a lot else in this ordinance. There's state statutory changes that she incorporated. There was some not inappropriate, but impossible to understand language that she has now clarified. And again, the language that we're asking you to approve with regard to the attorney would allow us to do what I just described. Figure out a way to bring back volunteer magistrates in some shape or form, get them trained by the attorney, but keep the attorney in the meantime, because we're going now and we've got to keep code enforcement going to have a meaningful process. So that's, I would
Councilman
ask that you
Vieira, then
not
Councilwoman
continue it
Hurtak.
yet again.
Just very briefly, you know, one thing we could do is move forward with this and have a motion that allows us to see that having legal report to us on, because we're being told, and obviously I trust Ms. Zellman, she's a wonderful person of integrity, that there would be a balance between volunteers and attorneys, and we could see what that balance is and what it's ultimately cost us after 6 or 9 months. That is a reasonable alternative that we could do.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
And my suggestion is going to be, if we approve this on first reading, between first and second reading, fix section 3 to prioritize. And I think, and I know that Ms. Zellman does not agree, but I think what it sounds like from council, or at least the two of us that I know, that we are going to ask you to prioritize the volunteers and then use the paid as backup. I don't have any problem with training or such and what, but I do believe that, I mean, that's going to be my request. I would like to be able to move this forward to some degree, but changes between first and second reading would allow you to keep it moving, but make the changes that this council is asking for.
Councilwoman Young.
So who would have the ability to make the appointments? To
Make their own mayoral and approved by city council.
say it one more time?
They're appointed
Why
by
don't we
the
let
mayor
staff
and then
answer
we
that
approve
question?
it.
I'll tell you the language, Tamaria Pettis-Mackle from the legal department. I'll tell you the language that's right now in the code. It is, each code enforcement special magistrate is to be appointed by the mayor and approved by city council for a term of 3 years. That's currently in the code, and it's code section 9-104.
Any follow-up? Councilman Maniscalco.
So if we go ahead and move this forward on first reading today, can you come back at second reading with what we discussed, reaching out to the attorneys, and then taking into consideration the prioritization or a structure of bringing back the volunteer magistrates? Would it give you enough time? And would that, to not further stall the process, but
Remember, we have public comment on this still.
yeah.
We'll work on it.
Question, if I can, may I inquire, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Shelby.
The magistrates who are currently serving, those names came before city council?
Mr. Shelby, as Ms. Selman stated when she spoke, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, can we go to public comment? Or do you have something else, Councilwoman Young?
No, I'm good.
Okay, okay. Okay, if you're here to speak to this item.
If you've already spoken this morning, can you speak again?
Yes.
Richard Revis. I was sworn in earlier this morning. I'd like to address a couple of issues that Ms. Mackle brought up and the other attorney, and I'm sorry, I do not recall your name, but you did really good. The backlog of 18 months. Okay, one of the reasons that there was a backlog was because I went out I had to take some personal times off for health issues.
What's your name?
I'm Richard Revis. Okay.
We're debating about whether you actually have the right to speak about. Mr. Shelby,
Oh,
My understanding is that council wanted the opportunity for those people who wanted to stay to hear the presentation and be able to speak. And of course, I don't set that forth for first reading, and maybe I should. But the question is, if you want them to speak twice on the same subject, my suggestion today would be to waive the rules, and then we'll.
do we have a motion to waive the rules for Councilman Vieira, second for Councilwoman Hurtak? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. I'm sorry, start again and state your name.
My name is Richard Revis. I would like to address a couple of issues that were brought up during the presentation. The 18-month backlog, yes, there was a backlog. Ms. Anderson, who is no longer with the city, would contact me prior to me having to go out last December. and would request that I fill in for any magistrate, which I did all the time. Sometimes I was the special magistrate 4 or 5 times a month, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I never said no when Ms. Anderson would call for me to fill in. I had told Ms. Pettis-Mackle a couple of times we needed more magistrates. I think I'd even mentioned it to a council member or two that we would need more magistrates. We do this for the love of the city. Ms. Pettis-Mackle mentioned that it's not eliminating this new ordinance that's being presented is not eliminating the volunteer magistrates, but yet we were eliminated. And we still are eliminated. The magistrates that were there, both Paul, Alex, I, and Laura, are willing and wanting to come back because of what we did and what we love for the city. So we're not, the issue of having the attorney there, yes, there's always going to be some conflict. There's always going to be a legal issue that not everybody understands, but that's what they're there for, as backup. It's heartening. It's disheartening that to hear some of the things that were said and to listen to the comments. We care, the empathy, as Mr. Manikowsko said. We were jovial. We'd get up, Yes, I saw the presentation for the attorney that's on there. The first thing he says, I've been an attorney for the bar for over 30 years. Okay, that alone is cold and makes me want to sit back and not say a word. We would make it light. We would kid around. The fees that was stated, that the code officer always gave a fee, no. The code officer would never recommend a fee unless it was a high fee for an egregious situation. That's when an officer would recommend a fee. It was always up to the magistrate's discretion as to what fee. Sometimes $1. I've given as low as 1 penny in situations. But this the fee basis now, low-income homes, seniors, that's going to directly affect all of them. Davis Island, Swan Estates, Beach Park, they're not going to have an issue with this.
It's public.
Everybody else will.
Public comment.
Thank you.
It's public comment. Mr. Michelini?
Steve Michelini. I think there's a couple different issues here. One of them is you have to have a permit to stop your fines. I have a client who's stuck in, with lack of a better word, permit hell, that's now being fined $3,000 a month for a property that was showcased as being what the mayor wanted to see for ADU and doing the work. This property owner went to the city and asked them what was going on and, try to help me understand. They bought the property with work that was already previously done. And now they're being fined. And we're stuck in this permitting cycle and we've responded in a timely manner, and we can't get out. So there's a couple things that should be looked at, that if you are in the process of solving issues, we had to file for a design exception, we had to file for a special use. You not continue the fines while you're in that process. If you're showing due diligence and trying to resolve it, why would you keep fining me when the city is part of this process of resolution? And you get into this system where you can't get out. I think one of the other issues is, I think that it allows a city attorney to appoint a magistrate. That needs to be clarified. You should, on the permitting side, you were told, okay? You were told by the Construction Services Center if it's a violation there, or if it's a code violation, you have 2 fines that are tracking simultaneously for the same property. And then you have 2 different hearings. You don't even have the hearing on the same day unless you can ask for it. So you shouldn't have a double fine occurring on the same property. You shouldn't, if you file for a process to resolve the problem, it should stop. You shouldn't continue to be fined when you've submitted plans. If you don't have a permit, you don't have a permit. But that's not always the fault of the property owner. when they talk about fines, there's a chart there. You've never heard a city employee say anything other than $250 a day. And where do they get that from? That's coming from the city staff. And it used to be that it was based upon, as Mr. Arriva said, egregious fault, not some incidental issue. But you start at $250 a day and then it goes up from there. The resolution process is automatic, it's online. You have to pay a fee to get online to figure out what to do in terms of reducing your fine. And then, I mean, I guess, you know, one of the last things is that when you're in a process, you shouldn't be penalized continually, daily, for being in that process. And you certainly have no control over the processing times. Thank you.
I have a question about that, because it seems very reasonable, and I get that it's a quagmire, because you know, second guessing if somebody abusing the system and his work actually being accomplished, you know, that it's not a get out of jail free card to file a permit and then having fines not assessed. But it does seem reasonable that if somebody is being diligent and trying to go through the process to get into compliance, that this fine shouldn't be continuously stacked up against them, because it sounds like it'd almost be like a wall that would be difficult to climb over eventually. And especially knowing that I know we have permitting issues in the city of Tampa. I mean, that's just a fact. You're trying to get permits and get out of permitting, and I mean, sometimes it's a difficult procedure for one reason or another. So have you explored any ideas of how we could abate fines if somebody is showing progress of coming into compliance? I mean, could there be a category that these fines stack up, but then they automatically go away from the time that they've started the process of coming into compliance, or that it's not subject to the whim or will of a special magistrate or a staff?
Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the legal department. Mr. Chair, that has not been looked into. Again, that's not outlined in Florida statute to allow that process. So no one's looked into that. Again, code enforcement, that process is outlined. It mirrors the language and the provisions in Florida statute. But I did want to clarify a couple of things. You can't have fines and fines. You can only have fines related to Chapter 5 violations, Chapter 19 violations, Chapter 27 violations, Chapter 22 violations. Those are the type of fines. You can't have two Chapter 5 fines running on the same property for the same issue. That's incorrect. You can, and it does happen, where a property owner will have daily fines for work done without a permit and also zoning violations, because that property owner is also violating your zoning code, your zoning laws. So that is the process. That is allowed, because that property owner has violated the laws that want the city to enforce for Chapter 5 and Chapter 5 building code and for Chapter 27 zoning regulations. So, but I wanted just to reiterate is I, along with Michael Schmidt, other attorneys, we begged people. We text messaged our own personal friends to try to be volunteer special magistrates. There were no bites at it. No bites. We've sounded the alarms. The legal department, the clerk's office has sounded the alarms.
Before you go down there, I still have more clarification on this one issue that I asked.
Go ahead.
So, again, I'm a homeowner, and for some reason, maybe I did inherit a property that had code violations that I wasn't aware of. That now code enforcement's come out, discovered these. I'm now responsible to bring this property into compliance. I'm accruing daily fines or monthly fines, however it's done. But now that it's come to I'm aware of it, I've gone to the city to try to fix this issue, but I've gone, going through the city in this process sometimes is cumbersome and takes months. It seems odd to me that we don't have a process to stop or abate the fines at that point, or hold them into abeyance while I'm in this process of trying to fix the problem that I may not have been even aware of. if I'm doing my part, I would think, couldn't we accomplish that through our, I mean, let's say council, of course, council has to do it through ordinance, but through like this mayor's executive order, couldn't this be an amendment to the mayor's executive order? Does council have to create an ordinance?
I can look into that, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
and have that updated research at second reading, if that's the pleasure of council.
Having to go through hurricane damage, I know how hard it was to get permits and stuff.
I totally, yes. But
And I could definitely see there's, because I have a house that's X number of decades old, and, you know that things have happened, and trying to, it's difficult.
Right.
It's difficult, and I didn't have any, I was not in, I did not have non-compliance issues, but I'm saying if I did, I could see how that would be, because it takes so long to get permits, it takes so long to get these things. And
Yes, sir.
It'd be frustrating to have these fines pile up on me while I was in the process of trying to do that, even though I was trying my hardest to get it done.
I understand, and again, that's the beauty of our code and allowing for a fine reduction hearing process, and that's the beauty of the executive order allowing the legal department to settle code enforcement liens, soft cost liens.
The only thing I'm pessimistic about that is because it's discretionary, and, about the reduction process, it depends on your special magistrate or the staff, whoever it is, that they can waive that. I mean, one person may waive it, one person may not, right? So-
Actually, it's not discretionary. How it is in the executive order, that is the amount. That is not discretionary.
I know, I mean about whether they waive it or not. Let's say you could say there's a situation that a special magistrate could waive the fees, they could reduce the fees or reduce the fines, excuse me.
Right.
Okay, but they may not reduce the fines.
If that's what the special magistrate determines.
So that's what I'm saying. That's when I don't like the discretionary aspect of that, because I think if somebody's, again, being due diligent, maybe I would like to see this between first and second, if you explore those opportunities to figure out a way to resolve that concern, I think that would make me, that'd make me more amicable to this. Councilman Vera.
I'll research that, Mr. Chair, and I'll contact you before second reading with my research.
And just so you know, I'm very much appreciative of your responsiveness, and I mean, we were talking on the phone well into the evening last night about
Late
this.
last night, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Councilman Vera.
Yes, sir. No, I would suggest that because we're turning this into a workshop on steroids, I would suggest that we read the ordinance with the minor changes between first and second, and then if folks want to talk about this further, we can workshop it, because there are a lot of issues with code enforcement that are human issues of human welfare, and should be a lot of empathy and
So what is the
everything.
pleasure of council?
I mean, I'm happy to read the ordinance with the changes that we want between first and second reading. I still think a workshop is a good idea, but I think I think we would need to probably talk about it during maybe old business next session, and just kind of come up with an idea of what we would want that to look like.
Yeah, I agree.
And then maybe schedule it for summer. I mean, we would need some time to really flesh it out, because
Okay.
this is an issue that we, obviously, each one of us has something to say about this, so.
Go for it.
So, file number E2025-8, Chapter 9, ordinance being presented for first reading consideration. An ordinance of the city of, ordinance. An ordinance of the city of Tampa, Florida, making comprehensive revisions to City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, Chapter 9, Code Enforcement, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith, providing for severability, providing an effective date, including modifying Section 3 to specify that we want to use volunteer magistrates as priority and paid lawyers as backup, and Chair,
Between
you have-
between first and second reading, staff will report about the opportunities to abate fines while the homeowner or the property owner is trying to come into compliance.
Okay.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak. We actually have a second from Councilman Vieira. He beat you to it, Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, Councilman Carlson.
Can I say one thing?
Before he does the second reading, go ahead and do the second reading.
Second reading and adoption will be held on December 4th, 2025 at 10 a.m. City Council Chambers, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602.
Thank you.
Can you read the vote too? Announce the vote. I voted no, yeah.
Motion carried with Carlson voting no.
Thank you. I just wanted to say before Ms. Pettis-Mackle my no vote is no reflection of the good work that you did. It's just that I think we ought to have their workshop before. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. 56. Me too. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. Heather Bonds, Historic Preservation Specialist. I think I have a PowerPoint to come up, please.
PowerPoint? PPT? There we go.
All right, thank you.
Can we get it on council's displays too, please? There we go. Thank you.
Today I have the privilege to present a recommendation from the Barrio Latino Commission on a tax ad valorem exemption.
It's like magic.
There we go. The historic ad valorem tax exemption is a positive incentive program by the city in addition to the county. It is offered to both homeowners and commercial building owners in local historic districts to offset some of the cost of rehabilitating their historic properties. The application before you today is a commercial building located at 2234 East 7th Avenue in the Ybor City Historic District. It is currently owned by Ybor Nucio LLC. The two-story brick buildings were completed separately in 1910 and 1926, and both contribute to Ybor City's local and national historic landmark districts. It was originally built for the Keogh Furniture Company, followed by the Caditra family for design interiors. The structure has undergone several facelifts or facade changes throughout its history. The original facades are shown here from a circa 1925 Burgert Brothers photo. And here are the before and afters. Here is the western structure before and after, where you can see the full storefront reconstruction as the original storefront had been removed and had been filled in. And the eastern structure also reintroduced historically appropriate windows, restored the awning, and rehabilitated the storefront. Here are some interior before and afters, which showed the gutted interior transformed with wood flooring and beadboard ceilings. The buildings are also connected and open to each other on the interior. This is that connection. This is the second floor, which remains unoccupied and ready for office use now. The second floor also utilizes materials that are historically appropriate, with wood floors, beadboard ceilings, and wood support posts. With such care to detail and bringing back to life another structure in Ybor City's historic 7th Avenue, the Barrio Latino Commission approved this application as consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and voted to favorably recommend this tax exemption to the City Council. Staff respectfully requests your approval of this historic property ad valorem tax exemption from 2234 East 7th Avenue.
Councilman Maniscalco.
So, compliments to whoever did the restoration work, because my friend and I joke about the 70s and 80s, where it's like, with so much, from cars to clothing to what happened, because you saw the picture from 1973. They completely changed the facade, and this happened to a lot of buildings where the brick was hidden and something metal, something like that. But what a beautiful restoration. And what I like is that they kept the ghost sign on the side where you see furniture. So maybe it's not original to the when the building was built, but it still is a glimpse into the past of Ybor City. So yeah, no, this is great. Thank you.
Remember, something can only be original one time.
Also remember, somebody thought that building over there was beautiful at some point. Okay, Councilman Maniscalco, would you like to move this one?
Yeah, public comment.
Oh, we have public comment, I'm sorry. Is anybody here in the public wishing to speak to this item?
Move to
Hearing
close.
none, move to close for Councilman Maniscalco, second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you. I have an ordinance being presented for first reading and consideration. An ordinance approving an historic preservation, property tax exemption application relative to the restoration, renovation, or rehabilitation of certain property owned by Ybor Nucio LLC located at 2234 East 7th Avenue, Tampa, Florida, in the historic Ybor City Historic District based upon certain findings, providing for notice to the property appraiser of Hillsborough County, providing for severability, providing
Second.
for repeal of all ordinances and conflict, providing an effective date.
We have a motion from Councilman Maniscalco, second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? The ayes have it with a cough.
Thank you.
Motion carried with Viera absent at vote. Second reading and adoption will be held on December 4, 2025 at 10 a.m. in the City Council Chambers, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602.
Councilman Miranda.
I wish to ask if possibly we can put the park department here. Number 64, because we got some others that might be lengthy. This may be just a short 2-minute thing.
Okay, without objection, we will hear item 64 first.
And I apologize.
I just want to quickly move 58, 59, 60, 60, and 61.
Second.
58, 59, 60,
And
61.
The ones we didn't need
We have
staff for.
we have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? The ayes have it
And
unanimously. Thank
I
you.
apologize.
And we're moving item 60, or we're going to hear item 64. Are you going to talk to item 64? Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Council. Brad Suter, Parks and Recreation.
And the reason I asked, because that same neighborhood keeps calling me. I said, we'll turn it in. It's unfortunate we had some changeovers in those departments here recently, but I asked for you to come here so I can say, he said it on TV. That's all. So it's just that, I appreciate their calling, but I just want to make sure that they know that we're doing something.
Okay. A specific,
Yeah, it was about the minor things that we talked about. Something would cover where the sun hits all the time in the dog park.
Okay.
The lock at the dog park, kids can open and close it. They're afraid that they're gonna do that. A dog's gonna run out and who knows what's gonna happen. And in the backside, there's looks like an alleyway, but it's not. You can go through it all the way around to the other side. And there's where they drop off, some families drop off their kids. And there's an area that goes from one side to the other, but it's about a 3-foot drop on each side. And there's nothing to hold the kids back from not falling in.
okay. I'll take a close look at that last item. I understand that the lock has been corrected, and we'll look into the shade for you.
I appreciate it very much.
You bet.
Thank you, and I'm sorry to put you through all this.
Yeah, it's not.
But I gave you an into what we do, and you're not, I don't want to do what you do, I'm sure
If
you
I have
want
to
do
sit
what I
through
do.
this, so do you. How's that?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so that concludes item number 62. Let's see, item number,
No, it's 64.
I'm sorry, 64. Well, 62, that was Viera's thing, and he's not here. That's what I meant to say. Should we just hold that one for a second? Well, let's just move.
You also-
Councilman Viera,
Council-
if you can hear my voice, come in.
Mr. Chairman, just a reminder, if I'm following along correctly, there were items that were still pulled from the agenda, 20, 23, and 26 to be heard together.
Yes, yes.
We can dive into those.
Do you want to do those first?
Yeah, I'll talk about,
Okay. Okay, let's do it.
okay. Can
Yeah.
I talk about why I pulled them?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chair. I wanted to pull these just to kind of talk about, my thing is that when you have 5 pages of financial resolutions, that I think we really need to discuss them. So I'm hoping to get some clarification, and I want to thank Mr. Perry and his office for sending out the memo last night to make sure that the public knows we are not using CLT money and moving that around, because wow, did we get some comments about that. So thank you.
And for that, I truly apologize for the mess up on number 19. It just disappeared. And it magically reappeared on the agenda. And to sort of add salt to the wound, we actually got emails last night that it was returned to the submitter. So, and then you can imagine we were rushing to prepare a new one, and we had made some mistakes. So with that, I'm going to use the Wolf. Can you all see that up there?
Yes, thank you.
Let me move it up. Okay, so there are 5 items on the financial resolution. Probably the biggest one are the general fund adjustments, and I'll go through each one of them. We are finally going to close the American Rescue Plan Act, talk about FEMA reimbursements, And then finally, golf course and streetcar urine operations. The general fund financial resolution is primarily on personnel, and I'll talk a little bit about personnel here later. Next slide. So personnel adjustments 3.5. We got one slight one of about 300,000 for the fire department. How are we funding it? Funding it recognizing increased revenues. If you look on the financial resolution, we're recognizing the pension program that the state contributes for both the fire and the police F&P pension. We're also recognizing additional revenues from the convention center so that they fund their own. And also fire extra duty. So what I want to make sure is that we are not using any fund balance in order to fund this financial resolution.
23 and 26.
Can I just,
Councilman Carlson.
just before anything, just for the public, can you tell us what, in the last slide, what the personnel costs are going toward? Like, what is it actually going to be used for? Just so the public can understand.
Again, it depends on the department, and we don't delineate that within the financial resolution, so I don't have that information here, but I will tell you, terminal leave, and that's when somebody retires. City council's on that, and that's because Miss Mary Bryan retired, and she required that. We had increases in health care. It was really a bad year for the city's health care, so we had increased costs associated there, and it could be increased salaries and various other things, sir. If you want me to, I can give you more delineation.
No, just so the public has a general idea, because it says, some of these are self-explanatory, but others may not be. And so if there's any, real short explanation you could give so the public would know.
Okay, well, personnel are our salaries, our benefits, and the federal income taxes. That's what pays our employees. Operating expenses are things like contractual services, supplies, medical, T&I, motor pool, insurance. That's what's in the operating.
Councilwoman.
Is that what you're looking for, sir? Okay.
Ms. Kopesky actually left each of us email.
But it's not for me. I just
Oh,
want
okay.
the public to understand.
Yeah, I was just saying.
Because not everybody in the public reads everything, and I'm not sure that her note is helpful, but I'm not sure it was posted. So I just want the public to understand,
Okay.
because they're.
Oh, no,
they're looking through this.
absolutely, and I actually want her to come and talk about that, so that's a good segue, I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Clendenin, your city, during the briefing, you asked something about why did the personnel costs go up. I mentioned terminal leave, which is vacation and sick leave upon an employee's departure from the city, healthcare cost, and you got to understand that when we do the personnel budget, that snapshot is taken in May, and it's based on the information that we know in May and June. However, things change. I'm going to use a little bit example of me, that for the longest time I was on my wife's health care, so I wasn't paying any health care. She left that company, and I went, I have to come. Coming back on the city. Well, again, it's not that much, but it costs the city, let's say, about an additional $10,000 for Mike Perry. Pension. Okay, I entered the drop in February, so the city is no longer paying my retirement. But when I depart, my replacement is going to be picking up that stuff. And I'm planning on being through here for another 3 years, but you never know. Again, you got projected salary increases. You get mid-year position increases. We go through that formal process with the administration, with the chief of staff approving all mid-year position increases. And when we budget when we have vacant positions, we budget them at the minimum. And that's just the practice we have. Now we bring them above the minimum, then that's an impact on the salary. salary. So any questions on increases to the personnel budget?
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, and it's not about you, but the sensitivity in the public, you know, we've got an army of community leaders now who are digging through our budget and looking at everything. And something like this that seems innocuous, it says projected salary increases. As you know, in the past, the administration has come back to us afterwards and said, well, you approved, let's say, for all I know, that means there are 500 new employees that are coming aboard. That's not probably in this case, but the administration will come back and say, well, you all approved it. You know, like another example was the 11 million that was supposed to go for the Councilmember Vieira allocated for the fire station, and then we said, where did it go? And nobody knew. I don't know if it's true, but I heard that it went to Fair Oaks. But there was never to my knowledge, there was never a side-by-side comparison where it said you're taking that 11 million out of a fire station and putting it in Fair Oaks or anything like that. And so I just want to make sure that nothing we approve implies that we've approved some other major policy change. The other thing while I have the floor is that, you know, we have a rule, just for Chief of Staff Administration, we have a rule that anything, I think it's above 5 million, has to automatically go into staff reports. This is 31 million split up into several different things. We also have another rule that anything above 20 million, it probably says capital projects, but anything above 20 million has to be read twice so that we can have discussions about it. And so I wish that the administration would have just automatically put this in staff reports instead of us having to pull it too. Again, that's nothing about you,
Well,
but I think just for transparency.
I was unaware of the first one, the $30 million one. I know you have a $3 million requirement on contractual services, and the value of this is about $8 billion.
Yeah, I mean, Councilman Carlson, I had those same concerns, but I called Mr. Perry yesterday and we had a conversation, and he kind of alleviated those concerns for me. Because I was thinking the same thing, like, what am I missing here? You know, what as you lift up the hood, trying to figure out what you're finding, what you don't know. But I appreciate you gave me some very simple answers, but they were simple enough to actually for somebody like me to understand. So,
and like on the personnel, while $3 million is a lot of money, and I will recognize that, out of the general fund's personnel budget, it represents less than a 1% adjustment.
Yeah, and you all, to my colleagues, you all will hear me ask questions. That's because there are 50 or whatever community leaders that are watching, that are looking through the documents, and they're trying to ask the same question. Huh?
It's just Stephanie.
But they, you know, it's the idea is as the public's watching, they want to make sure that there's full transparency for them. So not to try to waste anybody's time, just to make sure that we have a full airing of everything. Especially because there's some things like the $11 million that didn't sound right in the way they were handled. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions on item 23?
Well, I think he has more.
Do you have more? No.
Yeah.
Or I can stop right here.
Well, I just had such a good briefing. I was like,
American Rescue Plan Act, $80.4 million we got for the federal government for COVID. We had a requirement to encumber all the funds last December and expend the funds in 2 years. With this final adjustment of $10,000 is it closes out that $80.4 million plus all the interest earned under the program. So we'll be finalized that. And you know, we had a lot of programs. We did fire and police. We did fire vehicles, police vehicles, facilities, capital projects, fire capital projects. And it really helped us recover our revenues lost within the general fund during COVID. FEMA, you know, we went so long without a storm from 2004 to 2017, and then we've been hit. So we've been in FEMA. We're working, while this financial resolution primarily addresses expenses related to Milton and Helene. We're still working with the federal government on Ian and Adelia. Where, as I understand that, the federal government has obligated Ian and Adelia. Now it's up to the state to review that, and we're working diligently with the federal government on our claims for Helene and Milton. Under the cost share agreement, federal government picks up 75% with 12.5 and 12.5 by the state and local. And that's for a category, and I'll tell what the categories are. Category C through G. Luckily, President Biden said for categories A and B, debris and hurricane preparedness, 100% reimbursement by the federal government. And so we went ahead and calculated whatever the water, wastewater, and solid waste claims are, plus their encumbrance, and we're pulling them in because we will end up that fund negative. And we'll do a one-night interfund loan on September 30th to October 1st. That's an alternative we chose as opposed to having to go out and get debt like I do believe St. Petersburg did.
Councilwoman Hurtak?
So how are we doing on the reimbursement on these hurricane funds? Because I know Mr. O'Hara came back to us, maybe it was the storm before, and basically said that we're getting some of that back, but how are we doing?
Again, like I said, I'll tell a story that I'm not sure which came up first, Idalia or Ian, but whatever the storm was, I was in the Emergency Operations Center getting text 5 years after Irma that we finally closed. So it is a very long process. My understanding on Irma and Ian, Idalia and Ian, they've been fully obligated by the federal government, but then the state has to do their review because under the FEMA process we currently are underway right now, the state is who's receiving the money for under the federal government. We are a sub-grant agreement, and the state of Florida wants to ensure that if they give us the money, that we've actually earned it. Under Governor Scott, he required a 100% audit for Irma, and that took some time. Now, as far as Helene and Milton, we have submitted our claims. We've worked with FEMA. We've worked with our Ray consultant. We feel pretty good. For everything, the small projects, and how FEMA does capital projects is anything under $1 million, they're not going to come out and inspect. They'll go ahead and just write you a check. And so say we have a series of parks, they're going to group them together to try to get $1 million. And then that will go on through. We have two big projects, obviously Fire Station 17.
Yes.
And the pier, I apologize. The name of the pier, I keep forgetting.
Ballast
Ballast
Point Pier?
I
Yeah.
apologize,
Okay.
Ballast Point Pier. Those are large projects because they're going to exceed $1 million. And so they're going to be treated sort of like a capital project. Now, FEMA has come down and they have looked at Fire Station 17 and they have looked at Ballast Point Pier. They also looked at the dam. And the dam, they said that wasn't caused by the hurricane.
Oh.
So they are looking at it. And I'm going to bifurcate the Fire Station 17 is we are getting reimbursed for the temporary housing that the firefighters are in. They realize we can't put them in that facility. And our next step is to working because I don't think we want to rebuild Fire Station 17 as is. We want to do some mitigation efforts for Fire Station 17. So again, our consultant, Whit O'Brien, is working with my staff and working with FEMA. But again, everybody understands where FEMA's going. Looking forward to the recommendations from the President's FEMA review, and hopefully they can streamline what is happening.
Thank you.
Real quick, could you put it back on the wolf, please? For those that don't know, category A is debris removal, emergency protective measures. And the emergency protective measures is when we basically lock the employees into the emergency response centers, A, B, 1, 2, and 3, I apologize. And we also have manning up at the fire stations, police force, and the emergency operations center. Of course, the preparation of our facilities to withstand the storm. And you can see the other categories ranging from roads to bridges to parks and recreation. So, any questions on FEMA? The next two are just reconciliation. Recognizes additional revenue from the golf course, about $700,000, and increased the reserves. That puts us in a very good place next year, because we think we'll be able to fulfill golf course additional requests from their own funding.
700 or 7?
That's 700,000.
Okay.
And then finally, streetcar. One of the things the streetcar did for 25 is they sort of hit us with cost allocation. They've never done that before. In other words, they just said, hey, this is what it's going to cost to operate it without bringing in their overhead. We went back and forth on how they allocated that. And so part of this increase is that cost allocation. And we're using streetcar operating revenues, streetcar fund balance, but we are taking about $700,000 from the general fund to pay for that. And it's kind of unique on how we manage financially their streetcar. It's not a transfer from there to there. They're a fiduciary fund, so you'll see it as a contribution. So that concludes my comments on the omnibus, which I think is agenda item number 29?
26.
26.
Yeah, can we get a motion to move to item 23, please? So moved.
Second.
Well, okay, 23 we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
That was 23.
No,
No,
that was
this is-
26.
That was 26.
That was 27, I thought it was 23.
Yeah, and then I before he moves to 23, I did want Hager to, Ms. Kopesky to go over this, because I think Councilman Carlson got a good point about what we're spending on personnel, because personnel was a big topic that we discussed during the budget. But there's often, we don't know where it goes, so.
Okay, so we'll hold off on the motion, Ms. Kopesky, and then we'll move them both together. How's that?
Sure.
Hello, Hager Kopesky, City Council Budget Analyst. So just in light of the fact that there was a component of this that related to personnel, and when I say personnel, I mean specifically not the pension portion, but the other, let's call it general wages and other benefit type areas. I just wanted to break this out a bit. There had been some questions after this hit the agenda, and the easiest way to address those was to try to break it out in some major buckets. Mike explained that terminal leave was a component. That's a one-time expense that hits generally when you have a buildup of a long-term employee. Those can be some large numbers, and Mr. Perry referred to our dear Mary, and that's an example of something you would see here in this column for council, but that did occur in other departments as well. So terminal leave as a category was about 370,000 of that 1,000,001. The second column is the area where you would basically say, in some fashion outside of typical, let's call it cost of living or other, there were adjustments that were made to salaries over the course of the year, and these departments felt those in a way where they needed to make an adjustment to cover those, hence the reason it's part of the reallocation resolution. I will pause on the third column, Mike, just because there is a unique aspect to the convention center where the particular, let's call it line item that was used was other salaries and wages. We have not talked about this yet, so I don't expect you to necessarily address it. If you know it, that's great. But
Yes.
yes.
Mike Perry, Revenue and Finance. Typically, we use other salaries and wages for police extra duty. So they very well may have TPD, TFR working for the events, and TPD and TFR charge back to the convention center those extra duty costs. That's typically what we use other salaries and wages for.
Okay. And then the others are much smaller. I would say, just to confirm that I'm saying this correctly, for certain departments in the budget, you will assume that there could be a grant allocation, which would offset the salaries. And I noticed that in this particular case, it may have been that you thought there would be some of that existing in revenue and finance, for example, and if that doesn't have the opportunity to occur, it will have a I don't want to say negative, but an offsetting impact to that particular line. So that was a component as well. For the most part here, though, the intention was to understand that the two biggest components are the one-time effect of terminal leave and then various salary adjustments that would have happened after the budget.
Councilwoman Hurtado.
Quick question, because the 180 in contract admin and 100,000 in EBO, how many people are in those?
EBO, I know, was added one position, so
Okay.
that accounted for that. Either one or two positions.
Okay.
But I know it was one. And contract admin, I'll have to go, I don't have that answer.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying, because those are just big numbers, so that's an interesting one. Okay.
Councilman Carlson, did you have something?
Yeah, I just thought of something else. Are we allowed, this, I know this is Ms. Kopesky's thing, but are we allowed now to approve an EBO budget with the new rules from the Attorney General?
Economic and
I'd
business?
say let's take that offline. And
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what the words are. I don't have the
It may
document.
mean, may mean something that we don't.
So the other thing is, Mike, is there on the convention center, sorry, it's late in the day, and
I'm going to make a motion that we never look at spreadsheets after lunch again.
That'll
So-
make the budget public hearings go real quick.
Is the convention center set up as an enterprise fund by itself?
No, sir, it is not. It is within the general fund, and you can go either way.
Can we set it up as an enterprise fund?
Yeah, I mean, that's really up to the administration, but I will.
Is it up to the administration or city council?
I'm gonna punt on that and let y'all arm wrestle on that.
But, so
But I
my
do believe it's
question
the
is there a P&L just for the convention center? Because we keep seeing all these costs coming in from different, especially the capital costs, and it's a heavy burden on the CRA. I wonder, is there one place where all that is?
For the
right now?
convention center? Yes, we do. We have to
Where-
do special reporting because of the debt for the convention center.
Where everything, including this, all the operating expenses, everything are brought in?
Yes.
Okay, we can talk about offline. but
Yeah, it's
I think you
bonded,
said-
it's bonded money.
I would just, while the convention center is making money, during COVID, they weren't having any conventions. The general fund supported that. We didn't relieve dismiss any of the employees there. I think they were redirected to other activities. But at that point, the convention center was in a losing, net expense, and it was picked up by the general fund. And we're sort of lucky that we have a good convention center, and they are generally earning a net income, but that's without cost allocation.
Yeah, I mean, you're not including the subsidy from the CRA and the other cost allocations, right?
Not on that. I think the only subsidy on the CRA is to pay the debt.
The reason why I ask, typically when the documents, the last time the CFO's office presented documents to us on the enterprise funds, it had revenues on one page and a cost on the other, but there was nothing like an income statement that said what the total was. We kind of had to add it up on our own, and we saw through that there were several that were losing money, and Fed and his team have worked really hard to turn the parking into a surplus. I just want to make sure that we're looking at each of these individually, because I ask a lot of questions because on some items, the administration has set it up so that we don't quite know unless we ask the right question what the numbers are. I want to make sure that there's places where all the numbers are so that so there's full transparency to the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move those items, 23
Okay, are we done with the financial resolution, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please. Please, God,
Okay.
yes.
This one should go fairly quickly. And the first thing I want to talk about is that this is a non-cash transaction. This is purely on the balance sheet. There are cash transactions, collecting revenues, paying Mike Perry. That's cash in coming out. This is a non-cash transaction used to put the asset and the liability on the balance sheet. You see, I talked to you about the bottom line, this is GAAP, and we are audited in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles. And I just read our last audit finding, and it says we are in agreement with GAAP. So this is something we have to do. Now, what happens? This financial resolution's the initial recognition. Let me get that.
Yeah, pull it down, just pull the sheet down.
No,
Just pull it.
it's easier to read this way.
Okay. What I'm trying to do is,
Keep coming down. Yeah, pull it down some more. So we can see the top. Keep going, keep going.
okay, I was trying to avoid the,
There
you go.
Perfect.
okay. So this is the initial recognition of the full value of Sabita liability, and it's based on a contract. And what GASB has said is that you have entered a long-term agreement for services, technology services, which in effect they're treating like a debt. And so, and you'll see at the last slide is when we expense this during the year, this is actually a debt expense. So I highlighted the stuff on the right just to go to show you that the Tampa Police number revenue is equal to the Tampa Police expenditure number. The technology and innovation revenue number is the same. I apologize, I did not plan on having that. I thought the colors would come through. So any questions on this?
We can see it on our monitors. It's
Okay. So what happens during the budget year?
I'll zoom out.
Okay? So the annual budget expenditures, currently, before Sabita, this would be an operating expense primarily out of bulk hardware and software, and maybe other technology line items, but we're still paying $1,000. After Sabita, the 2B is we're paying an interest expense of $150 and a principal payment of $850. It's still $1,000 out the door. We're just placing it in a different category within the budget. Now, talked to my fixed asset supervisor this morning, is how do you calculate that interest rate? He goes, well, we figure out the last quarter what the interest rate is, and we do it like that. So when you sign a contract, like for Oracle, there's not an interest rate in there. We calculate that interest rate in order to comply with Sabita.
Mr. Perry, I am worried about your mental well-being. You just got the biggest smile on your face. I never see you smile like that. You just got totally giddy when you're talking about pre-Sabita and post-Sabita and interest payments and principal payments. It was like Santa Claus slid down the chimney.
Well,
there is something seriously wrong, and I suggest you seek help.
We love this.
This is happiness.
Yeah.
It is.
Again, this is Professor Perry. and like I told, Lee Huffstedler retired.
You started glowing there for a minute.
And they put me in charge of the accounting office too. And I graduated UT with a degree in accounting in 1982. It took them 43 years for me to do an accounting job.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. And so what's the financial resolution? $30.6 million. Police
Bring
Department.
it down a little bit so you can see the top.
Professor Perry, can you bring it down some?
Okay. Thank you. So the general fund, the Exxon contract, that's I do believe a 10-year contract. So that 28.9 will be amortized over the 10 years. On base, 1.1, local option gas tax, stormwater and water operations for city works. And that comprises the $30.6 million. Does council have any question?
Any questions? Councilwoman Hurta.
I just wanted to say thank you for explaining that, because $30 million is a really big number and can freak people out. So I think it's a really good thing that we're just able to say, okay, we did just pass that Axon contract and it's going to be over 10 years. So It doesn't mean that there's money sitting in the bank necessarily. It's just a debit.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
okay. Well, I know this was a little extra work, but I really think it helps us get fewer emails.
Councilman Carlson?
Yeah, and the same reason why I'm asking all these questions, that'll help us keep from getting emails tomorrow. I would have recommended that the Axon one be on a different item. I don't know why Axon, why is there a $28 million one with a whole bunch of little ones? It seems like the little ones could have been on a separate item.
You're not approving the Axon contract here.
No, I know, but because the numbers are big, the public in particular pays attention to them. And so when implied in what I'm saying is that there are a lot of very skeptical people in the community right now. And because of the way the administration has decided to present numbers in the past. And so as they're looking skeptically at this, if they see one big one with a bunch of little ones, the question people are going to be asking is, why did the administration try to do this, and are they trying to pull a fast one on us? And so if it was separated, it would just allay concerns.
Take that into consideration.
And I'm not talking about the accounting department, I'm talking about decisions the administration makes.
Councilman Vieira, are you going to move these items?
Yes, I am. I was going to say that a gentleman who's here for item 62 needs to leave in about 25 minutes or so, just to, if I may have that one next.
Okay.
But
That
yes.
is next.
What do you know?
Yeah, okay, we have a motion from Councilman Maniscalco to move items 23 and 26. Second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Mr.
council.
Perry.
Have a good
I
weekend.
appreciate your work. Thank you. Okay, so we are at, where are we at? 62. That's right, we were at 62. I was trying to get on 62, but you weren't here earlier.
I know, I heard. I was like, my bad. That's why I asked for that, I felt bad. And may I set this up, Mr. Chair?
Please do.
If I may, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody being up here. We have here some really good people. We have here Mr. Sean Stevenson, who's here. We have here, of course, Raquel Pancho with our ADA section here in the city of Tampa. We have Sergeant Mel Gardner, who's here. And we have here a very special young man, Mr. Eric Kaiser, who's here. And if you want to come up, Eric, and y'all may. So this is something that I motioned for. It's for these slips, and I'll talk about them. But Eric here is a 31-year-old young man who was hired as one of our special needs interns here in the city of Tampa under the program that we passed a few years ago. And I'll get into my frustration on that, by the way, because I'm not letting that go. But Eric is a young man who is on the spectrum. And what he's here for is something that's really special. But on a larger note, it's why this program should exist, why it should be fully funded, and why we should have more than 2 or 3 interns operating under it. And by the way, everybody up here I know agrees with that. This is not adversarial or anything against anybody there or anything of that nature. But so Eric was hired originally to work with Sean, and now he works as a contractor in purchasing, right, Eric? Mm-hmm. Okay, purchasing. And he continues to work. If you take a look at what Eric's brought to us today, it's symbolic and representative of why this program is so good and why we got to do it and why we got to fully fund it. Eric is also looking to be an ambassador for autism and for sensory challenges here in the city of Tampa, and I certainly hope that we do that. So again, my question is, on this program, we're going to hear from Eric, but how many Erics have not been able to benefit from this program? We're going to hear from him. It's about giving somebody a shot. It's about giving somebody a chance who just wants to work, whose parents just want their loved one who has an intellectual disability or special needs otherwise, just to be able to have a shot at life. And it's about making sure that people have their God-given potential. It's also about hearing from people with different perspectives. We're hearing a lot on attacks these days politically on pluralism and diversity in the workplace. And the whole idea is that if somebody has a disability, if somebody is a veteran, if somebody's an African-American, Hispanic, LGBT, whatever it may be, that they come from a perspective that others can learn from. okay? That to me isn't political, it's the Sermon on the Mount, okay? But whatever. So what Eric is here for to talk about today are these blue slips, and I'll let him explain what they are. Essentially, Eric came up with a program, an idea where whenever a person on the spectrum, and Raquel will talk about how we can also expand this, and I'll be making a motion on this, is pulled over by law enforcement, that they can hand this blue slip over and inform the law enforcement officer that they are on the spectrum. If I may, Eric had given me, I'm not going to read this all, but just very briefly, a letter from his mother, Susan. Eric, I know.
She was supposed to be here today, but she had a doctor's appointment that prevented her to come, prevented her from coming. So if you want to just paraphrase
Sure.
and pull some of the key points out of it.
Absolutely. And very briefly, just a couple of lines. It says, "My name is Susan Kaiser. I am the proud mother of an autistic child, Eric Kaiser, I'm sorry, I'm getting teary-eyed. There I go again. Okay, sorry, it happens. Who stands before you today. From the perspective of a parent and educator, the Blue Envelope program can offer peace of mind in knowing that our child can travel safely and confidently and navigate a difficult situation like a traffic stop without endangering themselves or the officer on the scene. In presenting the blue envelope to an officer, he or she will know immediately that they are working with an individual who may have difficulty responding to them. Eric was involved in a traffic accident. Although the blue envelope program does not officially exist, he keeps a blue envelope in the glove box of his car. When a police officer arrived on the scene of the accident, Eric followed the instructions on the envelope, keeping his hands on the steering wheel. He informed the officer that he had a blue envelope to present to him. At first, the officer was unsure of what to do with the envelope. Eric asked the officer to check the back flap of the envelope for information that would help the officer, and Eric responded. They began to respond to one another. The interaction between the officer and Eric went smoothly with less stress. So, from your mom, that's awesome, and she loves you, and she's so proud of you. So I just wanted to set that up so y'all, with the chair's permission, have at it. Go for it.
Go ahead.
I'll just give you my 2 cents, just real quick.
Okay.
It's not
Can you do me a favor? Could you move a little bit closer to the podium and start with your name?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Eric Kaiser, T&I contractor, I guess. For me, this just was a passion project of mine. I originally come from Pennsylvania, as you guys can see on the envelopes. It's not here from Florida. It's just something that I've felt has always been a kind of a sticking point. When I lived in Georgia, I had a friend who had gotten stopped, also on the spectrum. It didn't quite turn out too well. He was put in the back, and his parents had to come and collect him. Ever since then, he was pretty much a shut-in. He didn't really, so it's just something that I feel would be a good way to have a little more peace of mind, both for the driver and for the officer, and not to mention the families of those drivers. So that's really my thoughts on it. I would have prepared a little more, and I was going to say I was going to prepare a little more, but it's just something that I feel is a very necessary it's like a friction point. Remove that friction point. Make it a little safer, make it a little easier for people to recognize that sometimes the driver might not have the best interaction. The more recent one, like in the letter, the interaction where pulling over off to the side was a little more nerve-wracking for me, just because the car already said like it was overheating, and I'm like, I don't know if but thankfully the officer was calm after I said, hey, I have a blue envelope, there's instructions. He was just kind of like,
hold on 1 second. Lisa, would you mind taking this and putting this on the wall for us?
oh, okay.
Or the whole thing? Yeah. That's the letter that's the letter that's inside the blue envelope.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what it says.
I can, gotta zoom out.
All right, you know
He
better
was-
than me.
There we go.
Okay, and then the blue envelope.
Yeah. You can throw that down at the bottom where the lines are. Look at you micromanaging.
There we go.
Yeah, perfect.
There we go.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And then I'm just gonna pass it off to
Okay.
Raquel
Very
from
good.
here.
Good afternoon. My name is Raquel Pancho. I'm the Americans with Disabilities Act Coordinator. Thank you, Chair and council members, for having us present today. We also appreciate Councilman Vera and Miranda for actually making this motion. Truly appreciate all of your compassion and work towards meeting our community members' needs, including those with disabilities. I see that you do tremendous work very regularly. So before I actually jump into what we're proposing, I'd like to share that the local public safety coordinating council is actually examining a program that they may be bringing in to the larger Tampa Bay area. So we're going to be monitoring closely what they are going to be instituting, because we want to make sure that anything that the city of Tampa is going to be instituting is actually going to be cohesive in conjunction with the overall goals. People travel in and out of our city boundaries all the time, so we just want to make sure that we're being cohesive. Before we also jump into the actual details, I'd like to debrief you a little bit on the Tampa Police Department's Help Us Help You Special Needs Registry. This was actually instituted back in 2018. It's a way that our community members, residents, have the opportunity to register their address with either they themselves or the loved ones with information on their disability, any communication limitations, any behaviors that law enforcement may see or first responders may see when they actually report to the household. In recent years, we actually expanded that based on a recommendation by an autism-friendly advisory board member. She has a teenage son that's now going to be driving. He is autistic, and she had concerns about the stops during traffic violations or whatever. So we actually now include vehicle registration into the TPD Special Needs Registry. Again, that is all strictly voluntary. What will happen is when an officer reports to the resident on the address or reports to a vehicle, the person's information will automatically come up. The individuals, again, have the opportunity to provide as much detail to our officers as much within the form. So in conjunction with Eric, as well as TPD Sergeant Roz, and I'm going to butcher her last name, Angelopoulos, and my intern and I also did some research. We discovered there are a couple of wallet card programs, which is actually what was mentioned in the original motion. There is an Invisible Disabilities Association National Disability Wallet Card Program. They actually charge community members $20 to $25 in order to receive a very specialized card. The Disability Independence Group also has a wallet card. They charge individuals $10 to receive a very specific disability card. The concern with all of us was that we don't want to charge our community members any type of fees. So with this, and also Eric and our sergeant expressed concerns that in their nervousness of the traffic stop, that's a high stress, people are going to be very anxious. They may have difficulty in finding a small card in their wallet, and then also just may forget that they have something in their wallet. But with the blue envelope program that actually was being proposed by Eric, this would actually be placed in the person's glove box, where the typical practice would be they would actually have their vehicle registration with it. And then in turn, in that nervousness situation, they always have to go for that vehicle registration. They'll see the blue envelope, and then in turn would be able to pull that information out. Where we would like to kind of adjust, the typical program is, because we have community members who have a wide variety of disabilities that might actually limit their capability to interact with law enforcement, possibly follow instructions by the officers. I'm speaking about not only individuals who have autism, but individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing, individuals who have medical conditions, psychiatric disabilities as well. We would like for TPD to also expand this beyond people who have autism, but also have the ability to be able to benefit from the services. So what we would like to do, and again, the Public Safety Coordinating Council has some information, and this can be expanded with some additional information. For example, the information for how to communicate with the individual on the envelope can also be provided. But what we're envisioning, so that individuals have the ability to register and receive this on their own, the blue envelope would actually contain a form where the specific community member can write their information on their disability diagnosis, how they might be limited. Are they limited in speaking? Are they limited in hearing, processing information? As well as provide information about their limitations in being able to respond. So they may not be able to speak, they may not be able to answer questions, they may have limited eye contact, they may have some stimming behaviors. And then also some tips about some communication tools. For example, the individual might communicate with American Sign Language, writing notes back and forth. They may really need to be able to see that officer's face and facial expressions as they're communicating with them, and then other types of communication needs as well. And again, the goal really is, as the motion mentioned, people are traveling in and out of our city boundaries, so a cohesive approach throughout all of our areas is really going to be what's needed, and we're really excited to know that the Public Safety Coordinating Council is actually examining something. So while this is actually something that we are hoping to be able to bring, we're going to want to make sure that we're cohesive in regards to what the overall area is doing. So. And I have a TPD officer, sergeant, here available for any questions that you may have as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Yes, Board Member Miranda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to thank, first of all, Councilman Vieira for thinking of everyone and making something of this nature come about because of his bringing it to attention and solving a problem before the problem exists. This is preventive of something that could happen that could be much more tragical if this wasn't there. In fact, when I read this now, I think all of us ought to carry one in the car, up in the sun visor. Can you imagine I'm not a police officer, can you imagine dressing that lady's uniform, being so nice and happy, you get stopped and can I see your driver's license? Can I see it? And you say, just a second, it's under my seat. What do you think she's going to think of first? Under the seat.
Safety.
Or it's in my glove compartment next to me here. What's going to come out of there? You have to then start thinking defensive for your own life. And there's where the possibility of something existing. So we all change what Councilman Vieira saw just on that thought alone, and everyone carry one and put it up there and say what you need. So I answer, here's what I have. Here are all my papers, officer, and what you need to ask me. I think that would solve a lot of the problems. And I'm not a hothead, I don't believe. But sometimes I get itchy like any human being. You might have a bad day at the office, or you didn't sleep well last night, and the first thing you get pulled over by an officer, and you say, I'll be damned, look what's happening to me now. And I didn't do anything wrong. Of course nobody does anything wrong. Nobody drinks, nobody gets a DUI. I understand that. You believe that? You're crazy. People do it, and sometimes they don't know what they're doing. And these are the things that may save somebody who's had one or two drinks and is driving DUI, and they want to argue, but if they have that, they maybe think about it, giving it to you, and it solves that situation right there to some degree. So I think Councilman Vieira's thing may go much further than what we're talking today, and I want to thank you very much, sir, for doing what you're doing and your part of bringing it to your attention. Thank you very much.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilman Vieira. Thank you, Raquel, and everybody here. My stepdaughter is on the spectrum. She's considered severe, diagnosed with autism. She needs full-time care, somebody with her all the time, so she will never drive, more than likely. However, when you talk about expanding this, and what you're showing here on the Wolf Vision, people may not know how to communicate because she's limited to about 80 words. And even though she is the perfect child, and I hope my wife is watching this, because I say it all the time, she's a perfect child. Sometimes it's difficult, but there could be a situation. She's 13, she's getting older, to have something like this in her backpack, or you have to keep an eye on her at all times. And God forbid anything happens that we lose sight of her. If the situation comes about and people don't know whether it's a police officer or an individual, at least there's something that you know, whether it's a card or this sheet, that they can understand and, you know, and we avoid a tragic situation. So this is good, especially for, you know, as already been said, with the drivers, this is wonderful. I'm going to take this home and show my wife and say, look, this is what we're trying to do, and this is being led by Councilman Vieira, who's always been a champion with ADA and you and everything that he does. But, you know, I see here, driver is nonverbal, driver is verbal. You know, not everybody is exposed to people that have disabilities, and they don't know. It's not that they discriminate, they're scared, and they don't know how to react. They don't know what to do. So this is good, and I'm glad that Tampa is talking about this, is open to this, and that we're known as a city that is welcoming to everybody, and that everybody has a place here, and that, you know, we care for them. So, I mean, you said it's already been said, but I'm very happy to see this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Young.
Well, I wanted to thank Councilman Vieira for bringing this to us. This is an awesome presentation. A couple of words were mentioned earlier. We're talking about compassion, we're talking about empathy, and I would even go to add, you know, just education, but also, you know, understanding and embracing, you know, everyone around us that, you know, lives, you know, we all have the same Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but how you go throughout the day is very different. And so this is, I think it's amazing, and it's definitely a step in the right direction. And I would love to see this go, you know, go further. You know, we need a lot more, you know, compassion and empathy and understanding of, you know, of all of everyone that lives here. So I think this is great. And Eric, great job.
Councilman Carlson.
No, I think it's a great idea. Thanks for bringing it forward, and let me know how I can support it, please.
Thank you. Councilwoman Herzog.
Can't let everybody else go. So, no, this is a wonderful program, and I just want to say thank you, Eric, for bringing it to our attention and having Councilman Vieira come and bring it to all of us. It's great to hear. I mean, it's nice that we're starting, but it's even a better thing that while we're thinking about it, a larger regional entity is as well. And so, so while we're kind of on pause while we wait for the regional entity to make a decision, I still am really happy that we're all discussing this and that it's going to move forward. And I look forward to hearing, you know, what the policy is and how we center training around this once we have a regional decision on how this goes forward. Yes, Eric, did you have something? You got to come back and state your name again.
Eric Heiser. I had a tentative name for this project, Blue Peace.
Blue Peace. Oh, that's really
Spelled
nice.
peace of mind.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
blue, also like puzzle piece.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, that concludes. We have a motion. Okay, Councilman Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I may, I'm going to motion on April 2nd, and that's Autism Awareness Month, as well as, by the way, we're also getting a report on the disability internship program that day. But I would motion for an in-person staff report, including my main man, Eric, to come, to report on the interactions that staff has had with our community partners, including Plant City, Temple Terrace, and so forth, Sheriff's Office, State Attorney, and so forth, on implementing an agreed procedure for this program. And as Ms. Pancho correctly said, not only for autism, but for all disabilities. That's my motion. In the meanwhile, Eric, I'll take you, buddy, to go meet with Mayor Andy Ross, the sheriff, and others so that we can talk about your vision, because you've got a lot of heart, and it takes a lot of what our Jewish brothers and sisters call chutzpah to go up there, Bubba. So you did a great job. God bless you, man. I'm proud of you. You know what? Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, staff. We appreciate that. Thank you. Oh, so we have a motion from Councilman Vieira, second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are moving to our last orders of business and new business. Items 63 and 25. Clerk, please set a timer on this item, please.
30 seconds.
Seriously set the timer. Seriously set the timer. 10 minutes. 63 and 25. We're moving 25 with 63.
No.
No, we'll make it up with new business for now.
Oh, yeah. I'm getting a word.
You're like Perry, you're like giddy with all this stuff. You've like come to life in the afternoon.
I'll go wherever you know.
Miss Wynn,
Who doesn't
Yes.
love numbers?
Miss Wynn,
Great day, good evening, almost good night, council.
thank you.
And it's getting dark out early.
Yeah. Great day. I am
Start with your name.
Osea Wynn, Administrator of Neighborhood and Community Affairs. And council, you asked us to come before you today to talk to you about the Tree Trust Fund, which is the council motion CM 25-15694. However, before I get into the discussion of the fund, I think it's prudent that we speak to you in terms of who makes up the Tree Trust team within the city of Tampa. Almost every administrative department plays a role in trees, and I want to make sure that you are aware of that. So when we're speaking about trees, it's not one entity. So we have Jean Duncan's group, Administrative Duncan, Infrastructure and Mobility. We have Administrator. Her respective area is the right-of-way permitting. We have Administrative Abby Feely, who is responsible for the planning and the collection of the fees. My administrative area, Neighborhood and Community Affairs, we touch the plantings and the maintenance. We have the legal department, who's responsible for the ordinance, as well as the budget department, who ensures that we have proper checks and balances of what's coming out into the fund, coming into the funds, and what's going out of the funds. So we'll start this presentation with the today's discussion, and we will end it with the council item number 25, which is the tree canopy. So today we'll be providing an overview on the Tree Trust Fund expenditures, the mitigation fees that have been collected, updated on some of the programs such as the Tampa tree programs, tree mapping and reporting dashboard, and all of this was the support for the reimbursement resolution, and we had comments about that earlier. I forgot and negated to mention that we do have representation from the Chief of Staff's office, and then that's our sustainability and resiliency guru, Kayla Casille. So the motion in and of itself is that, Council, you directed us to come back to demonstrate that the data under section 1686F, that we are we're following the code prior to authorizing the transfers. This section includes the district level reporting from the 5 tree districts, as well as the accountability and visibility of the data that aligns and supports the ordinance as some of the concerns that the residents in our community tree activists have regarding of how the funds are used and what we're doing with the funds as they support the motion. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not bring up it's late in the day. Could you bring up the MO, please, the presentation, please?
There we go.
There we go. I apologize for that. Okay, there's too much technology. There we go. Sorry about that. So the Tree Trust Fund is found in Chapter 16, Article 5, and these are the specific areas. And I want to draw your attention specifically to the reporting aspect, the area that you ask us to ensure that we're following before you approve the transference of the funds from the Tree Trust Fund to the Water Department. So specifically, we're looking at, you're interested in the payments that have been received by each permit, the expenditures by tree types, the locations for each tree planted, and then the health check of the trees for the 6 and 12 months. On the fees collected, as it was mentioned earlier today, and you very well may be aware, is that to date there have been approximately $6 million fees collected total between FY20 and FY25. If you look at the diagram before you, you would note that the South Tampa and Central Tampa areas have accumulated most of the fees, with an approximate $80 million in total between those two particular areas. This is another depiction of the previous slide. However, this shows the amount of fees that have been collected by each planning district. Again, you can see that Central Tampa and South Tampa, the amount of fees collected throughout the years have far exceed what has been collected in the other particular areas. To note, the funds that have been received in each of the planning district are in receipt in lieu of, if the tree has not been planted, then the money is paid into the fund, each of the funds. The tree expenditures to date, we have one expenditure that we're in the process of requesting, and the other, well, we're requesting both. Let me back up. The Relief Tampa, this is the development of the planting plans for trees for within 4 projects within the city of Tampa. And then the pipes planting, this is the $334,000 that that was brought before you earlier today. The water department reimbursement for the trees that were planted for the pipes program in both the central and south districts. Some of the tree trust fund, tree programs we have is, for one, the, let me back up. The tree trust programs is a strategy that we use, which is a multi-layer approach that is in collaboration with not only the city departments, but with our partners. The Tremendous program is a neighborhood program and right-of-way planting program. This is led by our forestry division. Our Tremendous, let me back up. Our Tremendous Tampa, this is our, I'm all over the place. Let me go back. Okay, the Tremendous Tampa program is a program that we plant with the city greenways, right-of-ways, streetways with the forestry division. The Tampa Relief program, which was formerly the planting in the public spaces. This is the City of Tampa program that offers a comprehensive science-based approach to increasing the canopy throughout the city in our public land. We have the Mayor's Tree Giveaway, where we give away approximately 500 to 1,000 trees annually to our residents. And then we have the partnership with Plant Your Heart Out with Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful. This is the program where we continue to support the canopy with the sustainability and resiliency efforts and the departments throughout planting trees within the city of Tampa. We have a tree mapping and reporting dashboard, and I'll have Kayla to come up as you have questions, to come up and provide the status of this mapping and dashboard program, because this too supports the reporting of the Chapter 16 portion of our tree canopy. Before we get into the reimbursement resolution, I would like to ask you, what questions do you have that are,
Councilwoman
that's
Hurtak.
related to?
Thank you.
Yes.
This is my motion, and I appreciate it. If we could go back to the trust fund expenditure, I think it's page 11.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Is the presentation up?
It was for a second, and now it's back down.
I don't know what is.
Now we can see it, but there we
Oh.
go. Okay. So
Okay, let me get to page.
back to page 11. So this one.
Yes, ma'am.
Obviously, the pipes planting, the trust fund expenditure, we're going to decide on that today. But the relief, have we approved that expenditure?
For the relief, you want to talk about that? Oh, the relief.
I just want to know if it's.
It's not relief, that's.
Oh, that's Evan.
I just want to know if that's been approved by council, the spending of this money to develop 11 planting plans.
Hi, Kayla Caselli, Sustainability Resilience Officer, in case we want to double. Okay. Well, that has, that has been approved. I mean, it doesn't become, every expenditure does not come before council for the trust as long as it's being spent in the correct planning districts.
So there are multiple contracts that were executed last year, I believe, for the development of the planting plans. And that's what the 232 was, of which we've probably spent maybe about 160 would be my guess on invoices so far. And that's to develop the planting plans. We've done public outreach for those projects, and we've developed, I think we're on the order of 11 total.
Okay, but I'm going to go back to the point of, like, not everything comes in front of council.
Right.
Anything under 200,000 doesn't come to council, but everything over 200 ought to.
I think it was divided between 5 contractors.
Yes, there were 5 different contractors. 1, 2, 3,
Yeah,
4.
see, that's the kind of thing that the public doesn't like to see. I mean, as you heard this morning, this was a plan that took forever to be put together, and the public really wants this to be spent on type 1 trees. Type 1 trees. Not, and I understand, like, once we have a plan, but I would be very upset to know that some of this money is moved around. So I don't understand why why this is coming in front of us then, if that didn't come in front of us.
This being
The
the
pipes planting.
$332,000?
Yeah.
That
I'm
is-
just lost.
I mean,
is it my
the 330,000, my understanding is that's reimbursement. So that's money that the water department has already spent, and so they're asking to be reimbursed with tree trust fund money. So
Yes,
that's
but
that. And
but
then
that's the same thing, though. The issue is, so if this didn't come in front of us for the development of the planting plans, then why would it come in front of us now?
So, Osea Wynn, Administrative Neighborhood and Community Affairs, there were separate contracts, and I don't know if this is what Kayla explained, but separate contracts within each of the planning districts. Now I understand what you're saying, since those separate contracts, since they were less than the required amount, why are we bringing this before you now? Yes, so the way that we manage this is that because each contract was unique to the planning district, the accumulation of the 5 contracts was $234,000, but I do understand your question,
Yeah.
your concern, yes.
So not really happy about that, but let's move on to page 14. The Tremendous program, I've heard great things about the Tremendous program. That we have to add in slide 14.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's late in the day.
This is for planting in the right-of-way. We are never going to relieve the city without starting to plant on private property as well. So we need to add private property to the Tremendous Tampa plan. That's a priority. Especially, again, we're talking here about type 1 trees. as far as page 15, when you're talking about the Tampa relief, the comprehensive and science-based approach, is this what these 11 plans are doing? Okay, yes, okay. I thought so, but you know, you just want to make sure as far as page 16, the mayor's tree giveaway, really want to say, appreciate that this year it was only natives, and that needs to continue. No more bottle brushes. None of these trees that don't do anything for the actual job we need them to do.
I have a motion about that.
Yes, I know you probably do, but the Plant Your Heart Out, I think the Plant Your Heart Out is a great program. I've actually, my community park has received the benefits from that. But as we participate, again, what types of trees? From this tree trust fund, the public is making it incredibly clear that it's going to be type 1 trees only, not bottle brushes, not none of the crepe myrtle trees, none of those. Like, we cannot spend this tree trust fund because they're right. The trees are disappearing. The trees that we would have gotten a ton of mitigation money for, we lost probably 2/3 or 3/4 of those in Helene and Milton. And that money is never coming to us, nor would we ask. I mean, that was a traumatic time for everyone. But looking at it from a monetary perspective, we have a lot less money in that fund than we would have if we had waited and had people pay to get those removed. So I'm going to go back to one of my questions for this project is, what's the protocol when a planted tree dies? Because some of the things that we've seen, we've had some problems with plantings happening and then the trees die. So, like, if I buy a tree from Lowe's or Home Depot, I have 365 days to return that tree, plant it or not, and I can get a new tree and not having to pay for anything. And so I want to know what our process is, if that's a process, but if it's not a process, what do we do to replace those trees, and how quickly can we get that done? Because that's a huge problem. That's what we hear from the public. We're like, oh my gosh, you're spending all this money on a tree, and now it's dead.
I'll speak about the pipes. Rory Jones with the Water Department. I can speak about the pipes. We required the contractor to water it and do the inspection at the 6-month and 1-year interval. After that, there was no contractual obligation.
Okay.
Now, as far as the program goes itself, we hear you about the type 1. The Tremendous does include all the bottle brush, and there's a couple others in there. We heard loud and clear from our tree friends as well. But when that program, when we volunteered to add these trees into this program, the type 1 wasn't in the discussion at the moment. So, okay. But yeah, as far as maintenance goes, it's the 6-month and 1-year intervals.
Okay, and then I have a larger question about how we fund landscaping and trees now per department. And this, yeah, okay.
Can I, Kayla Caselli, I want to just respond to the previous thing to just add more context for that. So the water department basically was responding to this when they raised their hands to do that, and it was identify tree planting opportunities in strategic places. And so it included partnering with different departments that had never done tree.
Zoom out, we can't see the header on that.
I don't know.
On the top is a wheel on the very top.
There we go.
There you go,
Yes.
perfect.
Okay. So this was released in April of 2023 by our department. So we were the one who were challenging city departments to to come join on this mission of trying to plant more trees and not leave it to just the 3, 3 is not the correct number, but just a few people in the Parks and Rec department whose everyday job is incorporating tree planting. So
Council, we had that discussion too. We actually asked them to do that as well, to reach out across all the departments. So that was a council discussion that I was a part of.
Yes,
yeah. Okay. So the pipes project was in response to that. I want to commend the water department. They were the only ones at the time who raised their hand and said, we want to help you guys plant trees. We're already doing these 2 pipes projects in Virginia Park and McFarland Park. And is there a way that while we're already in those neighborhoods investing in the underground infrastructure, can we also leave that neighborhood with more canopy than we found them with? And how that went on was a contractor, their contractor, Kiewit, hired a sub, which was a landscape architect firm, to go and identify tree locations on the engineered drawings that they already had. so I can try and make this more zoomed in. But basically, it's like we already have these drawings that show all the infrastructure. They show the underground utilities, the above ground utilities, and they're trying to do what every arborist on the planet has told me: right tree, right place. If we try to only, I hear you guys on type 1, I understand, and I want to try and plant as many type 1s as possible, but the canopy analysis says that public owned land, we only have 4.5% of publicly owned land that can accommodate a type 1 tree. The University of Florida IFAS extension says that a southern live oak needs over 6 feet minimum to accommodate a southern live oak in its full maturity. So there's not many spaces in our right-of-way, as you guys are all very familiar with our city, that you could find 6 feet in every direction that we can plant that. And so we went in with the mentality of as many type 1 and type 2s, which include pines and cypress. I mean, those are really great large trees that we should also be adding in our palette of trees in our city. Actually, it's sometimes more indicative of the ecosystem that was here previous to development is pine trees and cypress. And so we were going in there with type 1, type 2, as many as possible, but we still believe that it was better to have a tree, even if it was type 3, than no tree at all. I mean, they still provide heat mitigation, they still provide ecosystem services, water interception, they still provide benefit to that neighborhood. And so the landscape architect, went and, chose the trees that was the right tree in the right place for the utilities, and we got a mixture. And I also wanted to just say, this was a pilot, so it was not meant to be a perfect program. We have lessons learned of what we did well, what we could improve on. It was just something to try something new, to build a new muscle that the city of Tampa had never done before, that the water department had never done before. This is way outside of their scope on a regular basis of delivering safe drinking water to our city.
Well, and thank you.
Yeah, Councilwoman and Chairman, if I may spend 2
Name.
minutes on the history of how we got here.
Brad, say your name,
How
please.
this got added to
Name.
it.
Say your name
What
first.
is your name, sir?
I'm sorry. Brad Baird, Deputy Administrator of Infrastructure. So this started early summer of 2024. Our Sustainability and Resilience Officer, Whit Remmer, was looking for a way to use the tree trust funds to start planting trees in the right of way, to help meet the city's goal of, as was just stated, of 30,000 trees. So he was looking for a vehicle to do this. The water department volunteered to add, it wasn't in the original contract, add these over 200 trees to the contract to make that happen. So the plan was to add the trees to 2 of the neighborhoods we were working in, Virginia Park and McFarland Park, under this contract by change order using the tree trust funds. The contractor then retained a firm by the name of Fisher Landscaping, who has an arborist, and to coordinate that effort, including the planning, including working with the citizens on, right place, making sure we're not over utility lines, et cetera, et cetera. We planted trees from July 2024 through May of 25 as part of the contract. Watered the trees every month from September 2024 to June 2025. We then, toward the end of that contract, many of you will remember, and 2 of you attended, we held a press conference on May 28th to celebrate the completion of not only the infrastructure work, but adding the 237 trees to these 2 neighborhoods. So a couple of months ago, as you guys know, we proposed a change order to City Council to, because the water department, if you will, acted as a bank until we could get the tree trust fund to reimburse the water department. That was proposed a couple months ago, and then was continued. And again, that was originally planned to use the tree trust fund. And then I just want to mention real quick, early on, several comments were made that the money was used to fund some water infrastructure. It was not. That every penny was used to plant the trees. So I just wanted to give that history as you know, a backdrop.
So I'm going to go back to my questions because I'm still. Cost per tree.
Where are you going?
Yeah, the cost per tree is a little higher, but it includes, it's not just the planting of the tree or the cost of the tree. There are times where you have to stump grind and you have to remove other components in order.
But what is it?
I don't know exactly what the cost per tree was, to be honest.
Okay, so these questions are indicative of something that I'm just not really thrilled about. So this was my motion. This was to come in front of us. I did not. No one reached out to me to do a special like a pre-meeting. I think all of us should have had a preview meeting of this. I have a ton more questions. I'm not really happy about this. I know you talked to T-Tag, and I greatly appreciate that, but you didn't come to me. You didn't come to the rest of council to talk about our concerns, because I am not inclined to give you this money. I'm inclined to give you the money for the type 1 trees, and that is it. That is what the community has very, very clearly and consistently said they want to spend the money on, especially if it's like $1,400 a tree. $6 million will go very fast with $1,400 a tree.
I hear you. It is.
And $1,400 a tree, I get what goes into that, but again, the public hears $1,400 a tree. That's a lot of money.
It is $1,267 per tree.
No?
It is pricey. This was part of the tremendous program. And if you look on that website, it does include those types of trees. I did hear loud and clear about the type 1. Understand where you're coming from, but I ask you not to penalize us for trying to do the right thing and try. We saw the canopy report. We heard the calls and cries for installing trees, and we were trying to do the right thing. And I would just hate to penalize the ratepayers for that extra effort that we're trying to do.
Well, and again, I appreciate it, but the issue here is not that you aren't trying to do the right thing. The issue here is if we approve this, we're setting a precedent that we will pay for trees that are not type 1 trees. And I'm adamant about this. But again, my point that I'm upset right now is that I really think that you should have come to each of us and answered these questions ahead of time and been able to have this conversation. I know you said that you were available, but that's not the same as coming to us and doing a presentation and saying, hey, this is what we're thinking, getting our feedback, coming forward with this, because then this wouldn't be a surprise. Because I'm not okay with spending this money on a bunch of trees that really aren't type 1. I understand that it's going to be hard to find places to plant type 1 trees, but that was the intent of this, the entire redo of the tree code. So I'm going to let my other council members talk, but and then one other thing. 30,000 trees is just a number. And I don't like to look at numbers. I want to go back to what Ms. Caselli said, right tree, right place.
Yes, yeah.
It doesn't matter the number of trees.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we're putting the right trees in the right place. If we focus only on a number, we're not focusing on the actual goal of putting the trees we need back in our city. So I just want to make sure I put that out there.
And I hear you. Let's not let perfect be the enemy of good here. And there's refinements, and I think we can take the feedback that we heard and build that into going forward. But ask you to reconsider.
We're not done with discussion yet, so we'll get there. We'll get there. Councilwoman Young has not spoken very much today, and I know a couple of people have left this, but I want to let her go first. So, Councilwoman Young.
Of the 237 trees, do we know what kind of trees they were?
We do have a complete breakdown of all the different trees, and it's really part of the tremendous program. Do you know the number of species total? There's 12. Yeah, you have them all there.
Yes, I have a list of all the species. crepe myrtle, slash pine, red bottle brush, bald cypress, red maple. And I don't have the numbers on this chart, but we can get them to you.
Yeah, I would like to know that.
Loquat, red maple, southern live oak, sweet gum, longleaf pine, to name a few. There's more as well.
There's
but-
12 or so species. I would put it in that category.
Do you know if any of them are still around? Are they still alive?
What's that?
Are they still alive?
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
There were some that did not make the hurricanes. There were some that were removed by the homeowners as well. But the overall majority are still alive today.
Okay, is that it? I believe Councilman Carlson was next, then Councilman Maniscalco.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Seems like it was yesterday.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're all getting tired. Rory, you're at bat here, so I'll ask you. And thanks to all of you, and Ms. Nguyen and everyone for, trying to work through all this with us. But here's the issue I have. I agree with what Councilmember Hurtak said, but my issue with it is this: if you in my day job, I work in government, nonprofits, and companies, and so I see everything. But the way I look at enterprise funds is the same I look at business units. So like Bloomin' Brands has Carrabba's and Outback, right? So Carrabba's and Outback, and I don't know a lot about their company individually, but inside government agencies and inside companies, typically if Carrabba's needs something from Outback, they would have a contract between them that would say, we need to buy these services from you. Maybe one of them gets a deal on something, and so they buy some services. They wouldn't just make it an accounting thing. There would probably have to be contracts because people are incentivized on it. And I think it was Brad who said, it was Rory or Brad who said, people think that we're taking away from or paying pipe services. Well, the way the public would look at this is that if you looked at the tree fund as an enterprise or as a business unit, and you looked at water as a business unit, I understand trees are not, but if you looked at them as businesses, so then as a policymaker, we have to decide which bucket do we want to pull out of. And so if water was going to pay for trees anyway, and then we use the tree fund to subsidize it, what that indirectly is doing is enabling water to pay for more water pipes, right? But then it's reducing the tree fund that we might be able to use on something else. So an example is, and you guys have a lot of work going on right now, if you need to get TPD to shut their roads down, do you reimburse TPD, or do they just do it for free? And do they
We
have
typically
some
don't
kind of,
reimburse unless it's after hours or extra time.
and then and what about if you repair a road? Do you charge? Does mobility pay you back for the roads?
Some of our contractors do have to pay for off-hour services in a roundabout way. We are paying reimbursing the contractor. So it depends on the situation.
Mobility, like if you look at mobility as an account that has money in it, water as an account that has money at TPD, if we have cross transactions, my point is that it can't just be, Brad talked about some kind of accounting transaction that we approved a couple months ago, but to me, there should be some kind of agreement. There should be a policy decision. You all said you talked to Whit about it.
And that's where I wish he was here to help explain that.
But Whit was great, but there's certain things under the charter that the mayor can approve 100%, but if there is a handshake agreement between the tree fund and water department, then eventually that's going to come to us in an agreement like in a budget change like this. And so what I think we should have is some kind of simple agreements that say, hey, sustainability is asking us to, while our people are out there, do this, and then it's going to and we're going to charge them on this basis. So the whole deal is understood in advance, and then city council, as policymakers, decide on that. Like another question is, if your workers are planning these, are you charging back tremendous for the workers too? So if a policymaker's number one priority was water, they would want to charge everything they could to Tremendous because you need to keep as much money in water as possible. If your policy priority is trees, you want to keep as much money in trees and spend on that. So I think to keep this clean and simple, I think there needs to not just be an approval of where the money goes, but way before that, if you think there should be an agreement between two enterprise funds or some other source of revenues, it would be good to get those agreements approved in advance, not just a line item, but just an understanding of what costs are going to be included, what kind of trees are we going to do, and it doesn't have to be anything complicated. The second thing,
I agree.
The second thing, and I think that's across the board, not just with you guys. The second thing is somebody mentioned 4%. The constituents said that they had a conversation with you all about that, but it's still, I forgot the number, 2,500 acres or something. It's a huge number of city-owned property where we could put trees. And so, although it might be a small percentage, there's still a very significant amount, as it at least was reported to me, that we could put trees on. And the last thing that I want to say is, from a branding perspective, I say this all the time, but we've got way too many logos and brands and names. Just in these slides, we have the Tremendous program, Plant Your Heart Out, the Mayor's Tree Program, and Trees for Tampa. And if the city was a client, I would say just call it the Tampa Tree Program and have all that underneath it. And if you're partnering with some other organization, like I used to be on Mayor's Beautification, I think that's whatever the new name is the same thing now. But whatever group you're partnering with, keep it under one brand, and then they're partnering with that. To keep it simple, why do we have 5 different brands for trees and all this other stuff? So the number one thing, though, is I really think if we have to look at these as individual businesses, because as we decide what money is going to each one, that's a huge policy decision about priorities that are set based on what we hear from the community. And if we start moving money from, it's not just an accounting change, it's a policy decision. So thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Can I say 2 things? One, these trees were not going to be planted as part of the water project anyway. I just want to make that clear. But really important thing that Councilwoman Hurtak said, and I'm sorry she walked out, it's very difficult to find a spot to plant a type 1 tree in the right-of-way because of all the utilities underground and overhead. So what she said about planting type 1 trees as all of this program from the Tree Trust Fund, they should go on private property. I'm glad she came back in. That's really important because there's not utilities overhead and underground near as much, as small percentage on private property versus the right-of-way.
Brad, I think we understand that. Councilman Maniscalco?
Thank you very much. So the concerns that I have, taking this reimbursement from the Tree Trust Fund, it just reminded me of the federal government borrowing from Social Security. And that's a completely different thing, but it's like, here we go. It sets a precedent where this fund at $6 million, whatever it is now, we start doing these kinds of things. The public, it sounds an alarm, and they're going, this is how it begins. But in regards to type 1, trees, I looked up, what is a type 1 tree? Someone mentioned, you need so much space for an oak or an elm or different types that the city of Tampa categorizes. Then I saw southern magnolias. And then putting them on private property, I got to bring up my grandmother because she loved magnolia trees. And magnolia trees that she planted, which would fit under the type 1, planted starting in 1973, okay, they're still around today. Even in the mausoleum where I'm going to be at, she put a magnolia tree there, planted it in 1985. It's there. All these trees on private property. I mean, there's, the houses she used to live. She loved magnolia trees. They're there. They've survived everything from Hurricane, Elena, 40 years ago to now, whereas the trees that we've planted and what we've seen in the last year, in the loss of our tree canopy from the 2 hurricanes a year ago, that doesn't make sense. If we're going to spend this kind of money, it should go, and yes, it's more expensive, type 1 trees that will create that shade that we want, that are long lasting. We're not throwing our money away. It costs money, but in the long term, you can't put, laurel oaks everywhere. I understand putting it in the right of way is tricky. You have such a narrow space, but again, thinking back to my grandmother who planted on private property every opportunity. I mean, she would, my mother will tell you, you know, you have to put, you know, you move to a new house, you have to put a magnolia tree. Those trees exist today on private property, so I'm grateful to her. But that's something that we need to look at, because when you look at private property, I think Councilman Carlson, did he mention 2,400 acres? I don't know what it was, but there's a lot of opportunity there. I think about, and I'll close with this, former council member Joe Chalura and all the work that he put in going back years in the original, you know, ordinance, and why we were recognized as having one of the best tree canopies in the world. I mean, you know, the hurricanes have done damage. I mean, I can show you pictures. I can talk all day long. I can show you pictures of down trees from Irma, you know, from last year. I mean, trees that you'd think would never fall. But the significant, since I've been elected, the significant decrease in our tree canopy. I mean, this is an emergency situation. You know, we talk about trees, we can talk about the loss of seagrass in the bay, that, you know, things that have happened in the last several years, that we have to remember that our environment, you know, is so sacred and so important. And in this case, with these, you know, you can't plant palm trees everywhere. It doesn't make any sense. You can't plant type 2 and 3 trees because they're just not long lasting. Whereas these type 1s are multi-generational trees that will help us preserve our reputation as having one of the best tree canopies. So getting back to the point, because we're going to talk about this reimbursement, it's concerning to me that it begins with this. It's like a piggy bank, you know, it's a, meanwhile, while we don't have the funds, we're going to borrow from this. Are we going to replenish it? You know, what's going to happen? Is it going to start dwindling? We're at 6 million, or we're going to start eating away at it? You know, we talk about, going back to what I began with, the solvency or potential insolvency of Social Security. The federal government owes like $2.5 trillion to it in IOUs, essentially. You know, when is it, am I going to get Social Security when I get to that age? Are we going to have money in that trust fund when I, you know, 30, 40 years from now, because we're going to start moving money around? Just things that I think about, and the concerns that I've heard from the community.
Councilman Brandon.
Well, this is an enterprise, so they're owed the money from somewhere. They did a.
Are they going to pay it back?
Oh, well, I think they have to pay it back. I mean, first of all, and then I'm not here to harp on anything, but when I see 5 areas of the city, the way they should be presented to the public, there's only 4 districts that makes up the whole city, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This is too large of an area when you put it out to 5 here, here, here. When you're going to plant the trees, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and everybody knows where those districts are, or just about the locations of them. That's number one. And I'm not here to bar for anything at anybody. I'm just saying what I think. Did you do the wrong thing? No. You try to help someone out, and it didn't work. That's what happened. And they went after you. They asked you to do something. I guess somebody had to ask you. You didn't say, hey, I'm going to do this tomorrow when you woke out of bed. So somebody or somehow it got to your department, and you say, I'm going to help out the city. And it worked out up to this point. And what happened, happened. And I can't fix what happened yesterday, but we can fix what can happen tomorrow. And tomorrow you should say, no, thank you very much. And it's very difficult to plant 1 trees, the class they want, the number 1, in anybody's front or backyard. Because they've learned from the driveways, how much I had to spend. They've learned from other things. The side of the house goes up and all that thing. So now you got to go somewhere else. And I'm telling you what the people tell me out in the street. I love trees, but not in my yard. Not all of them tell me that, but some do. So you're going to have to go to park, recreation, somewhere there's a lot of space, and plant the trees. Do we need them? Yes, sir, we do. But I hate to tell you, not that you were used intentionally, but you paid out money that now you know you ain't going to do it again. That's all. And I know you guys, you're straight down the line. You try to do the thing for the city. And in helping the city, you didn't help yourself. That's all.
Okay, my turn. This is interesting because since I've sat on this council, we did challenge Witt and others about seeking other offices within the city of assisting to be able to plant in public spaces. This council did challenge, we did have that discussion. So obviously it's the water department, and I want to reiterate something that was just said. I mean, Councilwoman Kurtuk, you may have been out of the room. the trees that were planted in this program were not part of the project. This is above and beyond the project. This was not, so we're not trying to absorb a cost that the PIPES program would have had. So this is above and beyond the PIPES obligation. So this was the city planted trees that were not part of the PIPES program. They did that because they were tearing up the dirt, they had the people there, they had the equipment there, they had the capabilities there, and they had the space to put, am I summarizing that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, so this was above and beyond the PIPES program. Now, do I love the way this has happened because of cost per tree and all these things? I think we could have had a better business model, and I think this is a good learning experience for your line of business and other lines of business that are gonna hopefully help out and plant trees in the future, of being able to, move past that. But y'all, no, I don't like the way, I would have, maybe if I'd maybe have done it better, differently, That being said, also in the types of trees, I don't like our types of trees. I agree with Councilwoman Hurtak, I agree with everybody else. In fact, I don't think that we should be paying a penny for any of these type 3 trees. But you were going by a guideline that was already established. So the same thing we deal with this day in and day out with the city of Tampa. When people are going with that's our guideline, shame on us, we have the guideline, we should fix that. Like I said, I don't think that any of the tree program money should be spent on type 3 trees, and I'll make that motion when we're done with this. I mean, that we're not doing that. In fact, I want to make a motion that we don't plant any bottle brushes, because bottle brushes are really an asthma kind of creation, or crepe myrtles. Well, I can see that we could plant crepe myrtles, but I just don't.
People can buy those. They're cheap.
No, but I'm not saying saying from the tree. I'm talking about even like in our general doing business in the city of Tampa. We'll just save that discussion for a second, for a few minutes from now. But I see how we got here. I think that it was good faith. I think you are operating an enterprise fund. You operated in good faith, knowing that this was above and beyond the PIPES project. And so we are obligated, I believe, to reimburse the enterprise fund because of that.
But we are not obligated to do it from this tree trust fund.
Well, you want to go from general funds?
We've got a bunch of money coming from the end of fiscal year 25. If it's only $330,000, I'm just saying that once we open this door, it's going to be hard to close it.
Well, we're the ones that open and close.
No, we did not. The administration did.
But I'm saying you're talking about precedents. We're the ones, and for future issues, we are the ones that either can open or close it. It's within our.
Except once all of us are gone and the next council comes and that administration says, well, the council before opened it.
Well, look at this as like settling a lawsuit.
I'm just saying. I am just saying.
Councilman Carlson.
But why don't we defer this for a couple weeks and get the chief of staff and CFO to come back with a new process on how they're going to handle it, and then if we have a new process that will be transparent and explain everything in advance with the contracts between the business units, then maybe we could do this as a one-off thing. But right now, it's still open. They can do whatever they want.
And that was my whole point of this, is that, first of all, because of what I said earlier, didn't have conversations with each of us. You're going to have to do that. I want this to come back for a solid workshop of how we are going to use this money going forward and what the parameters we want to put on.
Okay, Councilman Miranda.
Chairman, we have the right to change that legally by passing an ordinance on how you want it done.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait for all this stuff. You don't have to have a long meeting and whatever. The public is entitled to have, and we have the right to pass an ordinance exactly how one department head can borrow from the other, providing it comes before the public and the council, or whatever you want to do. But let's have a workshop for a small, I don't want a 10-day workshop. I want one that lasts a couple hours or so.
I already feel like I've been here for 10 days.
Well, you look like you've been here. I hate to tell you, you look very good today.
It's because we weren't prepped ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to say that.
Well, I did. I called and got a briefing on this. So.
But I shouldn't have to ask.
Right.
This was my motion.
Yeah. Okay, Councilman Vera.
Yes, no, just, I've pushed back. I had a meeting with these, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, long day. This, not adoption. This, a group I'm supposed to meet with at 4:30. I've pushed it back to 5 o'clock, and then I got to go to the Abe Brown Gala afterwards. So I have to leave here at 12 minutes.
That happens with people running for office.
I know, right? I'm walking
Well,
for office.
is there any sentiment of passing 25 today? Is there 4 people here?
No.
Okay. Okay, so let's move past that. It's not gonna pass today, so we're gonna have to continue this item. Can we get a motion to continue item 25 to?
So here's the thing. I agree with Councilman Carlson. Maybe if we can kind of find another way to come back. But I do believe that overall, we even mentioned it today, a bunch of different things that we think should be different. The fact that all trees should be under one umbrella, one similar logo, one similar design, and then listening, and we need to put parameters on how we want to spend, on how we want to do that. And I think it's a longer conversation than we have time for today. I still believe a workshop is the correct place to do that, because it would give these departments time to meet up with each of us, to meet with the community. I think there needs to be public outreach about this, because trees are a very passionate issue for many, many people. I would like this for the April 23rd workshop of 2026, but knowing that we have the money that we need to deal with, I do believe that should come up as a conversation during our budget resolution, which is actually one of my motions tonight for, actually it is not. We have staff coming to us on December 18th to see what we have left in the fiscal year 25 funds, and I believe we should look there for it.
I agree with that.
So you want a motion to continue this to the December meeting?
Yeah, December 18th.
Second.
Okay, Director Nguyen?
Yes, Council Seawin, Administrative and Neighborhood and Community Affairs. I just want to let you know, one of the things I did not communicate is that we will be having a tree town hall in January. Probably the second week in January, I think around the 18th, to get all of the community people who are interested, or members who are interested in trees, so that we can hear their concerns and we could have a path forward. And then,
No, I was going to say, that's great. If you could send it to all of our offices so we can get it on our calendars.
And I take responsibility for not sharing that PowerPoint presentation with all city council members.
And that's fine. I just think, yeah.
So Administrator Nguyen, so that, would you propose that we wait for that to?
Well, April would be after. Oh,
yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and Rory, the implications, if we continue this to the December meeting, the financial implications, do you have any issue with that?
No, I think that would be okay with us. As long as we were to be reimbursed for it, I think that would be completely fine.
So Councilman Hurtak, would you restate the motion?
My motion is to move, to develop a workshop to discuss trees on April 23rd, 2026.
Second.
And then I can come back with a more specific motion. I can work with you all, with OSEA's department on a more specific motion about trees. And then everybody else can reach out as well. Or maybe what might be the better thing is to reach out to all the members, kind of have a quick discussion about it, and then we can kind of craft the workshop from there.
Okay, so I'm not gonna make a motion about my bottle brushes, and we'll wait for all of this to happen before we do this. Okay.
Yes.
So we have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak about the workshop, and a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Then the
Councilwoman
second
Hurtak.
motion would be to bring back this
Item 25.
reimbursement resolution for December 18th, 2025.
So it's a motion to continue item 25.
I'm sorry, a motion to continue item 25 to December 18th,
Second.
2020.
Mr. Shelby has input on this.
Yeah, he's not happy.
I'm not happy.
You don't have Mike Perry's face.
No, I don't. I'm not talking about that acronym, which I don't even remember what it means. Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. With regard to number 63, I've been listening to council's discussion, and you have a very strong consensus. If you continue this, it's going to come back and the exact
this is
same.
25.
This is 25. This is the
63 was
reimbursement
resolved with the
resolution.
workshop, 25 is for the resolution.
Oh, okay, this
I
is
think we're
prior
good.
to, okay. Thank you for that clarification. I just want to be clear then, okay. So 25 is the resolution.
Continue to
Continue to December. 63, we resolved by having the workshop in April.
Okay, that's fine. Now, with regard to, so you've taken, that's for, I just want to be clear for that. That's with regard to number 63.
The workshop
We
is
already
63.
did
The
that.
workshop. Now, with regard to number 25, what's the consensus of council as to whether today you would approve item number?
We already answered that.
Yeah, that's asking.
Wait,
an issue.
no, what is the answer to that?
No,
We
Then
didn't.
why are you continuing it?
because if you weren't, maybe you weren't
Yeah,
here for
maybe you
this.
weren't here,
We were talking about, we're getting a reimbursement resolution. That's one of my motions today, to get the reimbursement resolution or to find out how much money is left in the budget
On
for
December-
FY '25.
on
That's
Dec-
coming on December 18th.
But then again, then this resolution does not talk about another source of money for that particular
We're
item.
gonna see what's.
We'll
We're gonna
handle,
see
we'll handle
what's-
this in December.
Okay,
We're
so-
good.
As long as your minutes would somehow be clear that this resolution,
Okay, how about this? Item 25 is being continued to December 18th with the idea that we will find a different funding stream for it.
Second.
Is that better?
that's,
Well,
yes.
maybe, actually, no.
Well, let me
maybe,
say
maybe
this.
not. Maybe it's still going back to the same thing, but we're going to,
We're going to debate.
Or discuss alternative funding sources.
There you go.
Can
there you go.
I, can I,
Okay, then let me just share my concern for whatever it's worth. If whatever it's worth is if council is not going to pass this resolution, you could make a resolution denying that, so that is quite clear for the record, and then make a
now
follow-up
you're getting,
motion.
now you're getting involved in council
Now,
business.
now
No.
you're getting too lawyerly.
Yeah.
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's
Okay, so
fine.
we have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtek. We have a second from Councilman Maniscalco
Do you
to
Discussion.
understand the motion?
continue item 25 to the
Discussion.
December. Councilman Randa.
I have to know a little bit more, because what I'm hearing now is that this money will come from somewhere other than the tree fund.
No, not
But
necessarily.
not
Not necessarily.
Maybe.
We're just,
There's alternative sources.
Well, alternative source is exactly what I'm saying then. It's a different source.
but we don't know what it is yet because we don't know
I
how much money's
understand that.
left.
However, when I do my math, if I have 7 kids and I borrow from one pension of my 7 to give to the other one, I wanted that 7th to pay me back for the rest of the kids,
Well, and
whatever.
I think
A
that's the
business
con-
agreement.
That's
That's
whole
the
point.
conversation to have in
Yeah,
December.
okay, I'm gonna listen to that, but I'll tell you that, it'll be hard pressed for me to vote for some other money that's going to another department to take away from them because somebody did a favor.
And we
That's
can
all.
have
Thank
that
you.
conversation in December. Mike Perry, do you have something that you would like to
Yes.
add to this conversation?
Mr. Perry, I know I haven't made that motion yet, and I apologize, but it's coming.
Mr. Perry, can you hear us?
that's the conversation.
It's delayed.
Can you hear us, Mike?
We cannot hear you.
Okay, we're gonna move past. We have a motion from
Mr.
Councilwoman
Chair.
Hurtek. We have a second from Councilman Maniscalco. Mr. Carlson.
I wonder if, as an amendment or a separate motion, we could just add that to ask the Chief of Staff and CFO to also propose a
Separate motion.
separate motion, okay.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtek, a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. And
Opposed?
now
The
I
ayes
think
have it.
that's-
Councilman Carlson, you're recognized for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. to put-
Too late.
I'd like to make a motion to put an adjacent item to that, to ask the the Chief of Staff and CFO to propose a process for which enterprise funds and departments can in effect have outsource agreements with each other, and in this case, do one after the fact. There should have been some agreement before this. It's not just about money; it's about the intent.
Put a 30-second pause on that, because that's new business, which we're going to go into just now.
Mr. Chairman.
So that, I mean, that would be a good new business motion.
One
Councilman
other
Randall.
thing, these funds that we're talking about, these enterprise funds are the ones that go to the market and borrow
Yes.
millions and
No, we
millions of
invite-
dollars.
yeah.
And I certainly want to do anything to hurt their credibility of having a fantastic loan operation and the way they borrow money and the way they pay it back.
100%.
At a very low rate, and there are only 5 in the country that have a triple rate, and they're one of them, and I'm not gonna lose
I
that.
would like you to bring that conversation to the December meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes, you guys understand where we are?
I have a question, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Ross. Oh, Mr. Ross. And Mr. Johnson.
Evan Johnson, City Planning. Item 63 included a presentation. They had been combined at a previous meeting, included a presentation regarding the post-storm canopy analysis, which Mr. Sean, Dr. Landry was here from the University of South Florida to give. It has been a spirited discussion, as it always is with trees, but I did want to mention that he is here and does have a short presentation.
Sitting over there.
And, you know, the good news is there's actually some good news, but maybe we should have led with the good news from their post-storm analysis, but.
How long is your presentation?
How long do you want it to be?
Forever. I'm yours for midnight. Let's go.
Can I just set this up real fast?
Yep.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I would prefer the conversation do you live locally?
Yeah, I live locally. I would have preferred it to not be part of this agenda item at all.
Yeah.
I don't know who did that, but that was a bad idea.
I know, are we paying you by the hour?
I'm happy to come to council anytime. In fact, I'm happy to meet with you individually, and I have in the past. And
Yeah,
so,
can you facilitate that? Okay, I would greatly appreciate that, because you could see we're all probably at our wit's end on this, especially on this item.
Can I request the beginning of the day?
I would love that, and I think on a light day, that'd be great.
I'm available anytime after 8.
And Mr. Johnson, if you could facilitate that and coordinate with my office and
Thank
make sure to get that on the schedule, I'd appreciate it.
So you want individual briefings, or you want him to come back?
Let's talk offline and we'll figure
The
it out.
public, I think, wants to see it, so.
Okay, so that concludes today's agenda items. We're going to go into new business. Councilman Carlson, would you please make the motion now?
Yeah, as to this item on the tree canopy, I want to thank Ms. Nguyen and staff for moving ahead with this. After the storms last year, we on City Council made a request. The administration didn't necessarily have to do this, and thank you to the professors and everyone who was involved in it, because it has really important information in it that everybody can see. We needed to do a benchmark of how much damage was done by the storms so that we could separate that from development. So anyway, it's a really important document. It's online if anybody wants to see it, and then we'll come back and present it next.
Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion to ask the CFO and Chief of Staff to return on December 18th, adjacent to the tree item, to discuss how they can formalize agreements and proposals between departments to make policy and budget decisions prior to doing any kind of work, and then to also create one for this instance to maybe backdate it.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Carlson, a second from Councilwoman Hurtak. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Thank you.
I have one more. Except for Councilwoman Young, the rest of you would know. When I ask for information internally, I officially go through the public records GovQA so that my requests will be transparent, and the city charges me for those. If it's $40, I'll pay it myself, but every now and then there's one for $1,800 or $2,000. In the past, you all know that I also don't use my expense budget at City Council, so I would just like to make instead of asking you all each time, I would just like to make a motion to ask City Council to approve having me transfer as needed my expense budget to pay the Public Records Department if requested.
Just for the record, I have never used the expense budget in 31 years.
The only time I've used it is for this, so.
Thank you.
But I have to, they have to give you the information if you're a council member. So I kind of think that's not a good use of money. Why can't you just come here and ask, or go ask?
Well, it's kind of the same thing we were just talking about. If you're taking a service, then do we pay for it or not? I don't like the fact, but I paid thousands of dollars of my own money for these. Okay. So if we can make a blanket statement of ordinance that we can request through GovQA and not get charged, that would be better. But in this case, I'd rather not pay $2,000 of my own money.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that.
I really think you just ask for it from here if you really need it. Just make it a motion, and we'll approve you getting the information. Like I mean, honestly, I feel like that's part of our job, and it's not being, we don't need to pay for it. This is what we're doing. We should have access to every single piece of information that we want.
Well, then. Well, it's also transparency, because if we authorize spending the taxpayer money on items that are requesting that we don't know what those items are.
Well, you don't know, I don't, just like Councilman Miranda, I don't spend mine on anything else. I don't
No,
use that
I
for any other-
understand that, but it's about, let's say you spend $1 on, I don't know what items.
Well, can I make
a
a motion that I believe that we should use GovQA so that it's transparent? And I don't think everything requires us to come, every request we make should come before council. But I mean, another way of doing it is to make a motion to create an ordinance or something that says that city council members who request on GovQA would not be charged.
Well, I think I'm more agreeable with, let's ask for staff to report on that ordinance. I think we need to have, you need to make a motion to have staff come before council to propose an ordinance.
So I'd like to make a motion to ask staff to come back to council to discuss whether we should create a policy to waive public records fees for city council members.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Carlson, a second.
I didn't pick a date because I don't know when it is.
Okay.
Do you guys know when we can go on?
Anything after January seems to be open for everything. I don't think we're loaded up anywhere after January.
I mean, January 8th? Or
Sure. Second. January 8th it is.
May,
Do you want a written?
Remember the holidays,
No.
staff are not going to be working too, so you may want to push it into February to give them a little
January
more time.
22nd doesn't have anything on it.
Okay.
January 22nd. We have a motion from Councilman Carlson for January 22nd, a second from Councilwoman Hurtak. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, ayes have it. Anything else, Mr. Sir?
No, thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Young, do you have any new business?
No new business.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hurtak.
Thank you. So we talked about having a workshop to talk about what we want for the budget and how we want it to look. Are you working on that?
I think we are, but I don't.
Okay, because one of the things that Ms. Kopesky mentioned today was about her information about the wage adjustment. I really want to talk about how we can get some type of reporting for that during the year, so we know what some of those wage adjustments are as they're occurring. But I don't want to make a motion if we're already going to have a workshop on it. I'll just save it for that.
Sam, make sure you talk to me about the workshop for prepping for the budget.
Okay, and then I'll just I'll talk to Sam about. I'll hand Sam my recommendation then.
Okay.
So, Councilmember Hurtak. Wow, that is me.
Did you say councilman?
Councilmember Carlson. I'm the second. I'm the second on this motion. Made a motion about council scheduling a discussion with John Bennett, Chief of Staff, Ms. Kopesky, and other staff on December 4th on whether or not stormwater monies or staff should be used on parades or special events. And I have talked to Ms. Kopesky about amending it to be a little more specific. And so just listen to it and see what you think. And if you like it, I already have it written down, so don't worry. So if you like it, we can amend it. So after rereading it, I'd like to suggest that this be amended to staff to summarize the costs for each of the following events in the last fiscal period and present that data to council on December 4th. This information should include both internal and external activities and the related costs of Santa Fest, ReliaQuest Bowl, each Gasparilla event, MLK Parade, St. Patrick's Day Parade, and Tampa Pride. And staff to explain how internal staff time is tracked when they are supporting an event versus performing their primary work function. Staff to be prepared to speak on what other options are available to avoid the use of internal staff, with the exception of off-duty, and what the estimated cost of these options are.
Councilman Miranda.
I'm not against that, but when you have strictly a debt, what you're asking for is the cost to the taxpayers, then you have to include what the taxpayers are getting for the amount of coffee or drinks or alcohol or whatever they buy and sell, and how much percent do we get back from that to be an equal equation.
No, I'm just trying to find out where staff
that.
time is being
I understand that, but we don't know. You don't know. We don't know what the other side is.
Could we,
Councilman Carlson?
Could we put that one as a separate one
Okay.
ahead of mine? Because mine was really about whether we could ban the use of, or limit the use of stormwater money or enterprise money to be used on parades.
Agreed, and to me, this is just tangential to have, the money. So yes, I will make this a separate motion. Do I have to read it again?
Well, my concern is the date, because I don't think it gives people, that's a lot of information, and that's gonna require a lot of staff power to be able to. What was the date on it?
He has the motion coming December 4th, but I have a feeling we're gonna end up with these questions of, how is the money, how are we allocating resources?
There's no way they're gonna be able to get all that information.
But they have to be able to monetize that.
But I'm saying from now to then, they're gonna stop everything and not do anything else between now and then.
They should have.
But they shouldn't, they should already have this information, because this is part of auditing.
Have you talked to them, do they have that information?
Well, how about this? I'll ask Ms. Kopesky to work on it.
We're gonna have you vote from the council.
So how about this? I motion to have Ms. Kopesky work on the summarizing the cost of events with the finance department, and I will let you know at a future meeting whether or not it is successful, or she can just email it to everybody.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Carlson. Congratulations, this is what you're doing over Thanksgiving. Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
And that is it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Maniscalco.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilman Miranda.
Do you have one, sir?
I do not.
Then receive and file.
We have, Mr. Shelby, he has an announcement about next week.
I have an announcement, Council. A reminder to you, please, that Monday, this coming Monday, from 1 p.m. on, probably till about 4, earlier if we can do it, you have set a special call workshop. And the purpose of this special call workshop is to discuss the framework for a resolution giving me direction to return to City Council with a draft that establishes the goals and objectives for the City of Tampa Charter Review Advisory Commission in recommending amendments to the city charter and guidelines for membership and the conduct of its meetings, including a tentative timeline with the steps necessary for charter amendment language for voter consideration on the March 2nd, 2027 municipal election ballot. So please, again, it is in the Sister Cities room down on the first floor. It is Monday. It begins at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for the reminder. Ms. Kopesky, you wanted to say something?
Hager Kopesky, City Council Budget Analyst. Briefly, I was speaking with Michael Perry, and he reminded me that the date, December 18th, when you're asking to have the item come back regarding consideration of excess funds that may or may not be able to fund the water department, is after the 60-day period of making adjustments to 25. So the reso that is being proposed is a 25 resolution that will naturally not be active anymore after the 60-day point.
Yeah.
So
yes, but generally we then look at the extra money and then try to decide what we want to do with it.
What happens? Okay.
So what would need to happen is there would need to be a new resolution as a 26th item.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you. We already talked about, because we wouldn't be pulling it from this source, we have to rewrite it anyway. But thank you.
That's if we do it that way.
Yeah, so, but thank you.
Councilman Carlson?
Just in preparation for the meeting, the charter meeting, in the instructions we got when we were on the Charter Review Commission, instead of recommending charter changes, there were a series of questions, like should we this or should we that? And I've written out a bunch of questions, and so that you all have some time to consider them, I'll get Andrew to email them to all of you. And then
do not respond to the email.
Don't respond to me, but that way you can think about them. But keep in mind, it's not a recommendation for a charter amendment. All we're doing is asking the question, like, how do we deal with this, or should we? And then they'll discuss it and decide if they want to come back to us with it.
Okay,
Wait,
we have motion.
I'm sorry. So if I understand correctly, you're going to be sending out potential questions to be discussed at Monday's work session, so they'll have advance notice.
But it's not questions to be answered on Monday. These are recommended questions that would go into the instructions. So remember last time the City Council gave the Charter Review Commission questions to consider. So it's not questions for us to answer, it's questions for the Charter Review Commission.
Well, it's the question, this council at the workshop would have to tell me whether you want those questions in the
So
resolution.
if you don't like the questions, you can exit out and say we don't want it, but that's what I'm going to propose.
And I have a motion received and filed from Councilman Miranda, second from Councilwoman Hurtak. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Y'all.